The bells of Baelor's September tolled in dolorous waves that rolled through the great stone canyons of King's Landing, reverberating up every crooked alley and down every sun-splashed courtyard until they reached the high red keep itself. Merchants froze mid-haggle, sailors paused while hauling hempen lines, and beggars peered from beneath grime-black cloaks, all drawn by that singular, terrible sound. It was the knell of judgment. Lord Eddard Stark, Warden of the North, Hand of the King, once the realm's surest pillar of honor, was to die this day. But death is a shape-changer, and on rare occasions it is taught to wear another's face. They gathered in their tens of thousands before the steps of the Great September, a sea of humanity surging against rope lines and spear butts. Sellsword captains jostled silk-robed courtiers, small folk pressed cheek to perfume cheek with minor lords desperate for a glimpse of history, each soul craning toward the marble platform that jutted beneath the wide-eyed statues of the Seven. Morning sun lanced through yellowed haze, turning the air itself to molten brass. Soldiers from the city watch lined the dais in double ranks, burnished helms reflecting the crowd like warped mirrors. At the foot of the steps, Ser Island Payne rested the great sword ice across mailed thighs, its Valyrian steel rippling with oily light. No common I noted the barely perceptible tremor in Ser Island's gauntlet, nor the minute twitch in the muscle of his ruined jaw. Fewer still noticed the second executioner, a slight man in black robes who stepped into the shadow of the King's Guard standard, face concealed beneath an ornate mask of smiling alabaster. He stood so still that even the flies lit upon him without fear, yet behind the mask his gaze never wavered from Ned Stark. Ned emerged chain-bound from the September's great bronze doors. He moved slowly, as though every step were weighed by centuries of Stark dignity. Blood caked his temple where Joffrey's jailer had struck him. His gray eyes were dull and distant. To the masses, he seemed the very image of a broken lord. They saw the slump of shoulders, the shuffling gait, the raw band about his neck where the thin iron collar chafed. They did not see the glimmer of quicksilver clarity behind those eyes, nor the tiny primal spark that refuses extinction. They did not hear the words whispered at dawn by Varys the Spider, hissed through a keyhole, promising life for a lie. They did not know the plan had changed in the black hours before sunrise, when a coin the color of old moonlight passed quietly between hands in the dungeon corridors and the faceless man known among Braavosi as Feral Cat stepped out of a forgotten storeroom, smelling of dust and worm-eaten wood. The crowd roared as he was forced to his knees. Spittle flew, curses rose. Someone cast a rotten apple that burst wetly upon his shoulder. He did not flinch. Ser Island lifted ice, that ancient Stark blade, and sunlight kissed its dark ripples. The sword seemed to breathe. Joffrey Baratheon leaned forward on the throne set hastily beside the steps, eyes bright with cruel delight. "Ser Island?" the boy king called, voice high and sharp as a dagger. "Give me his head." Time contracted into a glass-thin moment. Eddard's gaze swept the crowd, seeking one face among the multitudes. Arya, warded by Yoren and half-hidden behind the pillar of a trading arch. Their eyes touched, a father's final benediction. The small fool of a king snapped his fingers once, and the masked executioner moved. It was not a flourish. There was no theatrical spin. One heartbeat Ser Island held the blade, and the next the hooded stranger's gloved hand closed upon Ice's haft with startling intimacy, guiding the sword's descent in a slow, deliberate arc. A clang sang through the square, steel kissing steel, as Ser Island's grip slackened under a pressure like iron fire tongs. The knight's knees buckled. He collapsed without a word, mouth frozen in silent protest, eyes rolling white. Around him, the gold cloaks stiffened in uncertain alarm. The stranger spoke in a voice pitched just low enough that only Ned could hear. "Breathe deep, my lord, and bow your head." The chant of the crowd drowned those words, yet Ned heard them all the same. He bowed. Ice swept through air thick with dust and living scent. Red mist fountained, yet not from Ned Stark's neck. The severed head that tumbled across the boards wore Lord Stark's likeness, gray-streaked hair matted with sweat, eyelids fluttering in glassy terror. But within that cooling shell linen padding rustled softly. Black dye soaked the gauze, spreading in a crimson stain that fooled every eye. And Ned Stark, living, rolled beneath a waiting cloak whose inner lining glimmered the exact pale stone of the platform. He vanished like a ghost slipping into his own shadow. Pandemonium struck. Some swore the head blinked, others that the body twitched. Joffrey shrieked for order while Cersei lunged to restrain him. The High Septon fainted dead away. Yet amid the chaos, the masked man knelt, presenting the gore-drenched sword as though nothing were amiss, buying precious instants. Gold cloaks and white cloaks converged, shouting, shoving, yet no two men agreed on what had been seen. By the time the first captain realized the prisoner's body was gone, the cloaked stranger had melted off the dais, leaving only a blood-slicked blade as witness. In the cavernous silence that followed, a single raven croaked overhead. Its wings beat the air like funeral drums, and somewhere in the depths beneath the September, a hand of the king drew the breath of a living man once more. The black-walled undercrypts of Baelor's September were a warren older than the faith, carved when Valyrian masons still walked Westeros. Torchlight flickered against pillars hacked from bedrock, each one etched in indecipherable runes. A river of shadow flowed before Ned and the man who guided him, that strange assassin whose mask was now tucked beneath one arm. He moved cat-silent, yet something about him bespoke neither sellsword nor priest. He smelled of wood smoke and sharp steel. They paused by an iron gate. "We have a small window," the stranger murmured, voice lilting with a hint of the free cities. "Guards will realize soon that no corpse lies upon that scaffold. We must reach the river before the bells stop." Ned's throat was raw, though whether from the collar or the nearness of death he could not say. "Who are you?" "A friend to the many-faced god," came the soft reply. "Names may be taken up and set down. Tonight I carry one that parts the crowd like mist. You may call me Kasser." Ned tasted the name as though it were new-fallen snow upon his tongue. "Why help me? I did not pay the guild. The debt is another's, paid in tears of red. Be still, Lord." Kasser pressed a cold vial to Ned's lips. Bitter liquid slid down his throat, stinging like nettles. "To dull the pain, your journey north will be long." North. The word throbbed behind Ned's ribs. Winterfell, Robb Cailin, Arya and Sansa, Bran and Rickon. Raging fires of hope flared, doused quickly by memory of chains and rubble. His family believed him dead. The realm believed. That lie would be his shield now. Footsteps echoed far back in the vaults. Shouts. Kasser swung the gate wide. Together they plunged into corridors where roots split stone and strange fungi pulsed with pale phosphorescence. The assassin led unerringly, never pausing, until a crack of light shone ahead. A sewer grate opened upon the rush, the city's broad brown artery. A weathered skiff rocked there, small enough to pass beneath the low bridges that crisscrossed the water. At its stern lounged a barrel-chested dwarf whose eyes glittered green in torch shine. "Thought you'd drown down there," the dwarf grumbled. "Get in, quick as piss off a balcony." Kasser helped Ned lower himself into the boat. Pain lanced his shoulders where the chains had bitten flesh. He clenched his teeth, gripping the gunwale until knuckles showed bone white. The dwarf shoved off, poles biting into the mudbank, and the skiff slipped into the current. Atop the bluffs the bells still rang, but already their rhythm faltered, confusion rippling up to the high stone towers. Water slapped hull. Flecks of filth dotted Ned's face, mingling with sweat. He stared to starboard where the sprawling skeleton of King's Landing clung to its hill like some mad wasp nest. Lamplight flickered in myriad windows. Somewhere a woman laughed, and further off a child cried for a mother who would never come. Life went on, heedless. He felt hollowed. The wolf has slipped its skin, he thought. If ever Eddard Stark walked again under the open sky, he would be a shadow clad in rumor. Kasser's voice drifted soft and certain. "We take you to the Steve at Maidenpool, then north by coast roads. The city will scour every gate, but none will look for a dead man riding a fisher's cart. By full moon you will reach White Harbor." "White Harbor holds Manderly men," Ned rasped. "Loyal, yet their walls have ears." Then ears must learn new songs. Chaucer tested the edge of a dagger on his thumb. A bead of crimson bloomed, wiped away before it fell. Some truths must be killed at their birth so stronger truths might live. Ned did not reply. The dwarf rowed, and the river drew them toward the sea, and the bells above fell finally silent. In Winterfell that night the ravens beat against glass like hail. Maester Luwin's voice shook as he read the black-winged tidings aloud to Bran beneath gray-green candles. And somewhere far beyond those high stone walls a lone direwolf raised a mournful howl. The boy did not answer with tears. His eyes were already oceans. Rickon shattered the silence, screaming for his father until Hodder carried him away. The great hall echoed with grief and the restless stomp of distant horses as men whispered of revolt. No one noticed the pale little girl bundled in rough spun who huddled beside the kennels, staring north. She held a white-furred pup whose eyes glowed like embers. When the pup whined, Arya Stark whispered a name only wolves know and set him free into the night. Robb Stark sat in silent council with Great John Umber and Galbart Glover in the tower of the armory, moonlight striping the table between them. News of the execution had arrived hours past, borne by a maester's swiftest hawk, and still Robb's knuckles were stone against the table's edge. The letter lay open beneath his gaze, stark as frost. His father was dead. The whole world slipped its alignment, leaving the air itself askew. Yet no tear escaped him. He was a Stark, and Starks were winter-wrought. "We march," Great John rumbled, palm like a ham hock smashing down beside the parchment. "We march tonight. Flay every Southron fool until his own mother wears his hide as a cloak." Galbart's voice was cooler. "Madness. We need banners from the Dreadfort, from Carhold, from Manderley. Calls must go out. Riders. There is no time." Great John roared. "Time enough." Robb cut in, voice low but taut as drawn wire. Shadows ringed his eyes. "We gather. We plan. When we ride, it will be as a pack, one purpose, one heart. The Lannisters drew first blood. They shall learn the taste of iron." He did not yet comprehend that somewhere beyond Watcher's sight, his father breathed. But the bond between wolf and cub is woven deep in bone. Some chord in him thrummed, urging caution where rage might rule. And so steel was hammered and oaths sworn amidst falling snow, while in the high rookery ravens preened in uneasy silence. The skiff reached Maidenpool before dawn 2 days later beneath a cloak of sea mist. Ned shivered despite the blanket now about his shoulders. Each hour of cramped motion had ground rust into his bones. Stiff-legged, he climbed onto the deserted pier and nearly buckled. Chaucer steadied him. The dwarf, introduced at last as Brun, unrolled a filthy tarp to reveal garb more suited to a small-folk sailor. Coarse breeches, patched tunic, a slouch hat that smelled faintly of fish guts. Ned donned them without complaint. The sword he had been given, a mere dagger, really slipped into a leather sheath at his calf. They tramped inland along a goat path where dew clung to spider silk. Beyond a stand of ash awaited an ox cart laden with earthenware pots. The driver, a stout woman with corn-yellow hair, dipped her head. "M'lords," she muttered, though whether out of respect or fear Ned could not tell. She offered a hand. He climbed into the piles of straw and pottery shards. Chaucer joined him. Brun vanished down the lane, melting into dawn like a dream half-remembered. Hours crawled. Oxen plodded. Ned watched the countryside unspool. Ragged hedgerows, barley fields ripening under pale sun, the distant gleam of tower houses. Every bend birthed new danger. Lannister outriders, toll posts, suspicious innkeeps. Yet Chaucer seemed to scent peril upon the wind. Once he flicked a pebble at the wagon's side, producing a note that drew the driver to turn down a side lane just before a patrol rounded the crest ahead. Another time he murmured 3 words in some foreign tongue, and a shabby farmer stepped from his hovel to hand them 2 fresh cloaks and a skin of ale. Trust came slowly to Ned. He had lived 40 years by the sword and knew that debts paid in blood often require blood in return. But when fever took him, deep aches and shivers that twisted dream into nightmare, Chaucer's cool hands bathed his brow and coaxed bitter herbs past cracked lips. The assassin who had slipped between heads and steel now hummed soft lullabies of unknown cadence, and beneath their hush Ned Stark sank into healing sleep. They reached White Harbor as the moon waxed half full. The city's alabaster walls gleamed like bone above the white knife, and silver lanterns bobbed from every mast in welcome of the Harvest Moon Festival. Merchants thronged the quays, hawking smoked eel and spiced crab cakes, their voices swallowed by gull cries. Overhead, streamers fluttered in autumn breeze. It seemed an alien dream to Ned, the realm celebrating while treachery ruled its heart. Cossar arranged lodging in the cellar of a potter's guild hall. There Ned bathed, shaved the bristle from his jaw, and stared at the stranger reflected in the copper-looking glass. The scar at his temple, the new hollowness beneath cheekbones, the eyes haunted by secrets. This was not the man who had ridden south in golden summer. This was gray dusk made flesh. The guild mistress, a ruddy woman named Ebri, brought supper of fish stew and hard rye. She bowed without meeting his gaze. Lord Manderley's men patrol every street. They ask many questions of travelers from the south. I pose no threat to his lordship, Ned answered, voice rough. No, Ebri agreed, but her eyes flicked to Cossar with wordless tension. When she left, Ned turned. You bought her silence, he said. Bought? A faint curve touched the corners of the assassin's mouth. Men speak of goods and coin, the house of black and white trades in promises. You risk much for a man you barely know. It is said your honor once saved a Bravosi child in Gulltown. The father never forgot. Memory stirred, quests half a lifetime gone. But Ned let it fade. And what now? I cannot hide in cellars forever. Cossar laid a roll of parchment upon the table. A map of the north. Inked dots marked Deepwood Moat, Torrance Square, Last Hearth, Bear Island.
Robb Stark reises Banners.
The Karstarks ride south even now. Yet many lords tarry, uncertain. They need a symbol strong as winter's bite. My death is that symbol, Ned murmured. A martyr's blood to unite them. Dead men inspire, yes. Cossar's gaze was needle-keen. But the living may guide victory. If a hooded wolf prowled the night roads, striking where Lannister claws reached too far, rumor alone would fan rebellion's flame. A hooded wolf. Ned's heart stuttered. You would have me fight from shadow. Honor tempered by cunning is not dishonor. It is survival. Your son leads openly. Let the father be blade unseen. Ned closed his eyes. Arya's fierce grin ghosted before him, Sansa's shy smile, Caitlyn's steady warmth. He exhaled. I will do what winter demands. Cossar rose. Then we gather claws for the wolf. Hill clans thirst for Lannister blood. Wildlings stray south in search of plunder. And there are darker allies. Men cast from hearth and hall who follow only coin and legend. Unseen, you may bind them to a purpose. Outside, wind rattled shutters. Somewhere distant, a horn blew thrice in jest, mocking darkling ancestors. Ned Stark drew the map close. Ink blurred before his eyes, but within that blur paths opened like frost fractals, branching across the snows of destiny. Whispers traveled faster than ravens. In lonely tenant fields, small folk spoke of a gray specter who stalked southern host wagons, freeing captives and leaving behind the sigil of a headless direwolf scratched in cart dust. At Old Queen's Crown, an entire Lannister levy awoke to find its officers gagged and bound while their swords lay buried blade deep in oak. Across the neck, flayed bodies of Bolton outriders dangled from weirwood limbs, a hush carved in their cold, open mouths. Some named the culprit Death's Hand. Others swore it was the ghost of Eddard Stark returned for vengeance. But in the chill caves beneath Moat Cailin, a council of rough-hewn figures knelt before a hooded man whose eyes glinted candle gold through wolf-gray strands. He spoke little. His voice was river stone under winter water. Yet every command rang with iron certainty, and hardened killers bent as if to a liege. Night by night, a rebellion's sinew thickened in silence. Winterfell's great hall blazed with torches when news reached Robb Stark of the hooded wolf's latest strike. A Lannister pay caravan taken south of Acorn Water, its silver coined out to starving villages. Lady Meage Mormont slammed a mailed fist to the table. "By the 7. I'll ride at once to join the spirit." Galbart Glover grinned. "Not a spirit, my lady. A man who knows guerrilla war." He glanced toward Robb, whose jaw set. The young lord's eyes sparked with an ache he dared not name. Every tale of the hooded phantom felt like the faint heartbeat of a father lost and found again in rumor. "Let the wolf prowl," Robb said. "He softens our foes. When we march in his wake. Through gaps he tears open." "That may be so," murmured Theon Greyjoy from the fire pit shadows. "Yet we should learn his face ere we crown him hero. Not every northerner bends to Stark rule." Theon's smile was thin as shore ice. "He fights for Starks," Robb answered, though uncertainty crept along his spine like chill. "Or so the songs say." Theon's words fell into hush. But even as they argued, ravens winged north bearing coded missives penned in ink mixed with human ash, and warm blood spilled south of the Twins where Carhold spears clashed with Frey outriders under the cloak of moonless dark. The war for the north had already begun, invisible to all but those who listened with predators' ears. Along the King's Road, Tywin Lannister rode with a host of 20,000, gilded steel, crimson cloaks, and the cold fire of certainty. Rumor of the hooded wolf reached him at dusk near the ruins of the Children's Tower, carried on the lips of a captured poacher soon missing his tongue. Tywin said nothing, but his gauntlet fingers tapped the pommel of his horse. By candlelight in his tent, he studied reports inked by ever-pessimistic ravens. Supply lines dwindling, foragers vanishing north of the Green Fork, small folk turning spiteful in villages where once they bartered in silence. "A myth, sire," Kevin ventured. "Myths move men," Tywin replied. Then, "We will mount the head of this wolf upon the walls of Harrenhal." Orders went forth. Gold cloaks quadrupled patrols, Bolton's seated garrisons to sworn Lannister knights, and spies fanned across marsh and mire. Yet the more they tightened fists, the more the hooded wolf slipped between fingers. At Lord Harroway's town, a Lannister officer awoke inside his own sealed armor, drowning in a barrel of boiling pitch. The sign of the dire wolf stared from the lid in blackened relief. Across tavern hearths folk drank deeper, voices rising in defiant song. Children chased each other through muddy streets, wearing rags about their shoulders, howling at pale moons. Somewhere a boy begged his mother for the tale of the northern ghost. Somewhere a girl whispered a prayer to the old gods who answer from faces in bark. Ned Stark's legend was growing teeth. Autumn deepened. Leaves burned red, then fell in drifts like dying embers upon the King's Road. On one crisp morning south of the Bar Rollins, Ned stood upon a rise beside Cossar, watching smoke coil from the charred remains of a supply encampment they had gutted in night's hush. Carcasses of mules lay stiff among collapsed tents. A pennant bearing the Lion of Lannister smoldered on a broken pike. "You could have slain them all," Cossar observed, tone neither condemning nor praising. "They were boys," Ned answered, eyes haunted, barely able to shave. "I would break the lion's claw, not slaughter whelps." Cossar's silence weighed like judgment. At last he said, "Mercy may yet poison victory. If so, let it be my own blood that sours." Ned turned north, where pale dawn light gilded distant forests. "I must reach Robb before winter closes the passes. Too many die while father and son fight as strangers." Cossar inclined his head. "We travel with speed but caution. There is game afoot." He gestured to fresh tracks near the ridge. Horses, half a dozen, moving in formation. "Hunters. A trap. Perhaps a test. Our shadows grow long, my lord. So too does the one cast by Tywin's fear." They moved. Paths wove between barrow mounds half sunken under heather and bracken. Crows cawed, lifting into gray sky. Late that afternoon they stumbled upon a ragged band of hill clans. Burned men, moon-marked and wild. Steel glinted, bows creaked. But when Ned lowered his hood, revealing the scarred Stark visage, the clansmen knelt upon frost-hard ground. "Winter's fong bites deep," their chief rasped. "Lead us, Lord of Snow." Ned spoke not of lordship. He knelt in turn, touching the chilled earth, and whispered a vow to share blood and bread. That night they feasted around bonfires while stars glimmered like shards of shattered ice overhead. Stories flew thick, of brothers lost at the Twins, of Lannister outrages at the Acorn Water Ford, of Frey betrayal. Ned listened, each word another stitch binding an unseen banner. When dawn broke, 200 more blades followed the hooded wolf. At Moat Cailin, Robb Stark broke his counsel early to stride the battlements alone. Mist steamed off sodden stones. Far below, the bogs stretched like drowned dreams till sunrise painted them gold. He closed his eyes to summon his father's voice. Soft counsel in the gods' wood, laughter amid first snows. He felt the brush of ghost fur at his fingertips, and he knew, with a certainty beyond marrow, that Eddard Stark was not yet dust in a gilded crypt. A rider burst through the gatehouse at midday, horse lathered. The man slid from saddle, crying for the king in the north. Words Robb would not hear for months yet. In the courtyard, Galbart Glover met him, parchment trembling in gauntlets. "Another strike," he said. "The wolf again, and this time a message." Robb unfolded the scrap. Letters cut with surgical precision formed but a single line. Ice remembers its forge. Fire raced Robb's veins. He thrust the scrap into the brazier, watching flames devour it. "Summon the banners," he commanded. "We ride at first light." And somewhere leagues south, Ned Stark felt the earth turn underfoot and knew his son would soon howl into war. They crossed into the neck via hidden causeways known only to frog-eaters and ghosts. Rain fell cold and constant, drumming upon reed baskets Cossar fashioned as makeshift helmets. Leeches clung to calves, mud swallowed boots. Yet Ned pressed on, fevered with purpose. Every mile northward lightened some invisible yoke. Behind him trudged hillmen, clans fierce as wind-flayed rock, their battle cries echoing in fetid mist. On the sixth night, a horn's lonely note trembled through fog. Shadows rose among reeds, pikes tipped with moonlight, shields painted in merman blue. Manderly men, their captain strode forward, cloak damp with drizzle. He stared at the hooded wolf's sigil, then at Ned's eyes beneath the hood, and his breath caught. "Lord!" Ned drew back his cowl. Wordless, the captain knelt. Around him 50 Manderly spears thumped mud and followed suit. In that bog-silent hush, Ned Stark set aside disguise. He raised the captain to his feet. "Not Lord," he said, voice hoarse. "Not yet. For now, merely a man who asks your steel in service of the North." "You have it," the captain breathed. "And more. White Harbor waits your summons." Summons would come, though not through ravens. Ned scribbled runes with a shard of charcoal upon birch bark. A secret call known only to Stark bannermen sworn beneath the heart tree's gaze. The captain folded the bark into an oilskin pouch and sealed it with pitch. By sunrise he was gone, hoofbeats fading over plank road toward bone-cold tidewaters. As snows began to fall, Lord's Lady Erin's knights reported sightings of a hooded host slipping through mountain passes. At Riverrun, Catelyn Stark woke from dreams of Ned's embrace to hear new tales from wandering minstrels. A wolf's howl drifting low across the green fork as lions screamed. She wept, though whether in grief or desperate hope none could say. And in King's Landing, Varys listened to reports from his little birds, while candle wax pooled around plump fingers. He smiled softly, eyes gleaming with secrets. "The North remembers," he whispered to the empty chamber, and somewhere a spider spun a fresh web across the Iron Throne's shadow. Snowflakes drifted slow as Ash the Night Ned Stark reached the Wolfswood's eastern edge. Spearwives of Bear Island flanked him. Hillmen ranged beyond in silent vanguard. Ahead, Winterfell's towers loomed, gray ghosts in half-lit gloom. Warm light pulsed behind arrow slits. The scent of pine smoke stirred heartache so fierce he staggered. Cossar clasped his arm. "Not yet. Stannis' shadowmen lurk, and Bolton spies breed like flies in feast hall corners. Show your face now and you doom the cause." Ned's breath steamed. "This is my home. The North itself is your home. Guard it first. When walls are safe, hearth may welcome you." Tears sheathed his lashes, freezing. He bowed his head in wordless assent. They faded back into forest night. Wolves howled beyond the ridge, answering some ancient summons threaded through bone and time. The rebellion quickened. In another season, men would speak of ice and harvest, of broken men and wolves that walk, of how Ned Stark's death birthed a ghost that carried the North upon its spectral shoulders, of midnight councils in the ruins of Flint's Finger, of guerrilla strikes that left lion banners scorched and tattered, of how winter itself seemed to ride with the hooded wolf, snowstorms blanketing his allies but blinding Southron eyes. Children would shout the tale in play, and mothers hushed them for fear of Lannister ears. Bards would strum sad chords, singing of honor cloaked in shadow. Yet on this night none of that mattered. In a cold camp ringed by pine, Ned Stark paced before a roughly carved heart tree, crimson sap oozing like tears. He laid a hand upon its chill bark and breathed an oath unheard by any save the old gods. "I am ice," he murmured. "I am memory. I am the blade forged in winter's darkest night. For house, for hearth, for children yet breathing, I will see this realm made right." Wind sighed through the boughs, scattering snow that glimmered like shards of broken moon. Beneath that silent benediction, the hooded wolf turned to his gathered following and raised his sword. Faces glowed in firelight. Hillmen and spearwives, graybeards and green boys, maesters, smiths, and silent killers of bravos. A hush fell that seemed to stretch from here to the very wall of night. "Ride with me," Ned said. His voice was not loud, yet in it dwelt the echo of weirwood groves and the thunder of shivering pines. "Ride with me, and we reclaim tomorrow." A single shout answered, then another. Soon the night quaked with wolf song. Raw throats lifted to star-strewn heavens. Far away, Robb Stark heard the call in blood and bone. He stood upon Moat Cailin's ramparts and smiled, for though distance lay between them, father and son marched at last beneath the same unseen banner. And winter, at long last, remembered its lord. Deep beneath the red keep, in chambers where dragon skulls once brooded, a man in robes of deepest purple knelt before an ancient brazier. Flames painted his shaven scalp gold. He set a single black feather into the fire. As it curled, Varys whispered, "A game of shadows you have chosen, Lord Stark. May the gods grant you swifter feet than lion's claws. So much yet hangs upon that northern wind." Ash spiraled skyward, borne upon unseen currents, and the spider began a new web. End of Part 1, circa 60,000 characters. Snow fell in dry, whispering sheets over the wolfswood, laying white silk on every pine bough and muffling the tramp of 200 insurgent boots. The air tasted of iron and wood smoke and the faint, pine-scented promise of home. Somewhere ahead, beyond the curtain of trunks, a lone horn gave a plaintive, broken call, once, twice, and then fell silent.
Ned Stark lyfte dag loved hand.
The column halted as one living body, the soft clink of mail swallowed by snow's hush. A moment later, Caesar materialized at his side like a wraith, tracks already half-blurred behind him. "Bolton outriders on the eastern ridge," the faceless man murmured, voice thin as reed wind. "6 riders. They carry no torches, but their mounts blow steam." Ned's heart beat an old, familiar cadence. Battle, blood, decision. "They ride the hunter's path," he answered. "Straight for the draw by the wolf tree. They'll smell our fires by twilight." Caesar inclined his head. "Do we silence them?" "Not yet." Ned's gaze swept the ranks. Hill spearmen in boiled leather patchworked with rusted plate. Manderly archers wrapped to the eyes in gray-dyed wool. 24 burned men painted with moons and scars. Half a dozen spearwives whose war songs could split stone. All waited on his word. The weight steadied him like chain and anchor both. "We split." 10 mounted hillmen circle west beneath the bluff. Let them be seen. Let the Boltons think they track a raiding band fleeing south. The rest dig fast pits here, and here. He traced in the snow with his dagger point. "We'll meet the hunters after dusk, when they bring their fellows." Caesar's mouth curved below his hood. Approval, perhaps. Then he vanished to pass the orders. Ned drew a long, slow breath. In another life, he would have ridden out beneath stag and lion banners, named the foe, fought with heralds blaring. Honor is the child of summer, whispered the wind. Winter breeds another kind of virtue. And winter, he reminded himself, was well begun. The pits were rough but deadly. Angled stakes cut from saplings, bark stripped to slick paleness, points hardened in coals scavenged from the midday cookfire. Snow shrouded them by the time the sun dyed red behind cloud racks. A hush took the forest. Ned ordered all flames banked low, then crouched among knuckled roots beneath the great wolf tree, that ancient oak whose trunk split to cradle a stone altar older than memory. The gnarled limbs creaked in a slow winter hymn. Hours bled one into another. Snow drifted thicker, diffusing moon glow into silver murk. At last came the jangle of tack, the crunch of cautious hooves. First 6 shapes, pale blurs in the gloaming, then perhaps 20 more, torches hooded to pinpricks. They rode with the confidence of men certain of prey trapped before them, dogs eager on a short leash. Ned counted banners. Flayed man scarlet on dun field, a mailed fist on black, barrowton arms. A mixed patrol tough as bar iron in winter. At their center rode 2 figures in better steel. A Bolton captain, ice crusting the edges of his pink flayed cloak, and beside him a maester in heavy gray, chain flashing with each step of his horse. Cosser's hand brushed Ned's sleeve, signal. Ned lifted a fist. All along the tree-lean invisible bows bent, sinew creaking. Let them come. The ghosts of every Stark before him seemed to breathe with him then, cold in his lungs. Justice, they whispered. Patience. The lead rank neared the first snow-coated mound. A sudden equine shriek tore the hush. 2 mounts plunged as earth collapsed, legs scissoring into jagged dark. Men tumbled, flailing amid stakes. Panic flared. Before shouts could order a wheel about, Ned dropped his hand. The night answered with a sudden storm of feathered death. Arrows hissed. Men died voiceless, throats spouting. The maester's horse reared, brain spiked, throwing its rider. The Bolton captain spun, sword half-drawn, only to take a broad-headed shaft through visor slit. Some tried flight, spurring mounts aside, straight into the second and third pits deftly hidden behind fallen logs. The whales lifted but moments. Steel-tipped stakes choked them. Snow drank blood and froze it brown. In heartbeats it was done. Silence flowed back, pregnant with steam-off cooling corpses.
Med signallet sis.
Hillmen spilled from shadow, knives out to finish groaning shapes, but Ned strode forward first. The Bolton captain lay pinned beneath his dead destrier, helm askew. Ned heaved the carcass aside with help from 2 burned men, then knelt. The man's eyes still lived, hazy with shock. The arrow had missed the brain pan, punching through flesh of cheek to embed in skull. Mercy, the captain mouthed. Would the Dreadfort grant it? Ned's voice was quiet. The man tried to speak, perhaps answer, perhaps plea. Ned snapped the shaft off flush to visor, then slid dagger beneath gorget into throat quick as priest's blessing. Warm blood pulsed once onto snow. He wiped blade on the Bolton's cloak. Burn them all, he told the hill chief standing behind him. Leave no sigil whole. The chief grunted assent. Torch fires sprang up, greedy, devouring banners and dead alike. Snow hissed to steam. By dawn nothing would remain but blackened stakes and ash that wind would carry east. Another shadow victory, unseen but felt. Yet trophies mattered. Ned crouched by the fallen maester, found within his satchel a small leather scroll case stamped in crimson wax with the Dreadfort sigil. He cracked the seal. Inside lay 2 parchments. One a roster of grain levies conscripted from smaller northern holdfasts, proof of forcible tithes starving villages. The second, more damning, bore Tywin Lannister's lions stamped in golden wax. Orders assigning Roose Bolton alone authority to garrison the strategic Moat Cailin, in the king's name, once the Dreadfort's banners reached the neck. So the lion sought to slit the wolf's belly by buying a traitor's fangs. Ned's jaw hardened. Bolton's hand crept far indeed. He tucked the letters into his own pouch. Evidence would be useful, but first they must cripple the coming occupation. Coster appeared as flame haloed his lean features. Smoke will draw eyes come dawn. Let them look, Ned said. We ride west now, quick and quiet. If Bolton marches for the moat, we shall arrive first. Coster nodded. 2 days hard, through drifts. Hillmen can move. They moved. Before moonset, every camp trace lay beneath fresh snow. The forest swallowed the hooded wolf as though he had never been, leaving only charred bones and wind to murmur the tale. In Winterfell, Bran Stark dreamed of ravens. They swarmed the broken towers, hundreds beating black wings, calling Ned's name in a language only wolves could grasp. He followed them through endless corridors to the crypts and there saw his father's stone effigy crack open like an egg, light spilling out, wolf-shaped and bright as dawn on snow. He woke gasping, sweat slick despite the frost that glazed his chamber's windows. When Maester Luwin bustled in with warming stones, Bran burst into breathless tale, voice piping with earnest terror and hope alike. Luwin soothed him, spoke of grief's shapes, of the mind's way with fancies. Yet that very morn a raven arrived, no banner, only plain parchment stitched with 3 words. Ice remembers forge. The Maester read and reread, brow furrowing. Bran saw his hand tremble. By noon the words had reached Robb's war council. The young lord stood before the great hearth, firelight warping his shadow to giant stature behind him, and read the scrap aloud to his bannermen. Galbart Glover sucked in breath. Meege Mormont whispered a prayer to nameless forest gods. Great John Umber roared it must be a lure set by the bastard of Bolton. But in Robb's chest a seed long buried cracked open, thirsty for light. Hope sang blood loud in his ears. Father lives, he said, voice rough. I feel it. Silence greeted him, thick as night fog. Theon Greyjoy leaned against a pillar, sharpening a dagger with slow strokes. Feelings won't bar the Kingslayer's blade. Dreams won't feed your host. Yet his eyes flicked to the parchment, uneasy. Robb's gaze hardened. Whether dream or truth, we answer. Double scouts along the King's Road. I ride within the hour, quiet, small guard only. If it is my father, he comes in secret. I'll not greet him with trumpets. His mother's counsel would have tempered rashness. But Catelyn rode south weeks past, chasing alliances among Riverlord houses. Absence left space for wolves to follow Gut and Moon. So Robb slipped from Winterfell under falling snow that night, cloaked in shadow, escorted by a score of the swiftest riders. Gray cloaks, gray horses, no banners. South they galloped, hoofs thudding soft under white drifts, like silent hearts beating a war hymn none could yet hear. South of the Fever River, Tywin Lannister's host encamped among frozen barley stubble, a copper-purple dusk settling on burnished helms. Ravens wheeled overhead, circling the gallows line where 3 deserters swayed, their crimes inked on placards. Cowardice, theft, desertion. Tywin paced before a map unfurled on trestles, candle stubs fixed with cooling wax to hold corners down against wind. Kevan Lannister watched his brother's eyes, pale green chips studying Bolton troop movements pinned in red. They were due at the moat before first frost, Kevan said quietly. Now word comes the column stalled in the Wolfswood. Harriers, they claim, a shade in northern snows. A ghost, Tywin murmured. Propaganda perhaps, but effective. Fear rots cohesion quicker than starvation. See here. He tapped a cluster of lion tokens near the twins. Roose Bolton cannot garrison the moat if his levies shake apart. Kevan tugged at beard. Send reinforcements? I send steel, the north smells invasion. Better we let the traitor earn his keep, or die proving his treachery. Tywin straightened. But we adapt. Issue new orders. Ser Amory's outriders will tighten the net along the Green Fork. Anyone crossing without sigil dies.
No exceptions.
And dispatch ravens to Lord Fry Insis. He ready the western ford for my vanguard within 10 days. Walder Fry will demand concessions. Then we concede a daughter's hand, Tywin said. I have grandsons enough. He lifted his goblet, wine dark as old blood. A king's fear thrives on rumor, but true power is supply. Cut the hooded wolf's lines and let winter do our killing. Above the map, beyond the canvas walls, a wind rose keening off the bogs, cold as memory. For a heartbeat Tywin thought he smelled pine smoke and burning meat, the scent of some far-off skirmish where lion men screamed into night. He dismissed it. Snowstorms carried strange perfumes. 2 hard days' march brought Ned's host, now swelled to near 500 with clansfolk answering secret call, to the western edges of the neck. Vast peat bogs stretched beneath low cloud, stinking of rot and salt. Moat Cailin's basalt towers loomed ahead, 3 jagged fangs thrust from mire. Cossar scouted while Ned convened chieftains below a half-collapsed rampart. Torches blazed in makeshift sconces, flames guttering in wind. A crude map scratched in dirt marked Bolton advance. 2,000 foot slogging north along the causeway, heavy wagons loaded with stout oak for siege repair. 10 miles out, maybe less. We spring here, Ned pointed, where the road narrows between pools, fell trees for barricade, set pitch pots. The vanguard hits, falls back feigning break, draws them onto spiked planks beneath water. Archers on rampart rake their lines. Great John would have called it cowardly skirmishing. These chiefs nodded grimly. They fought by cunning since the Dawn Age. Moat Cailin must hold, Ned said. If lions breach the neck, the north splits like rotten ice. A spearwife named Tala Bearclaw spat. Then we drown the bastards in their own red. Murmurs of assent rumbled. Night deepened. Scouts returned. Bolton men 2 miles off, marching by torch glare. Ned eyed the flicker across distant reeds. Time compressed to bright coiled readiness. He donned his helm, a plain nasal guard cap once worn by some dead Kerwin retainer. Over it the hooded cowl fell, wolf stitched on black. He buckled borrowed breastplate that pinched where collarbone met scar. Cossar placed a gauntlet hand on his shoulder. The many-faced god smiles tonight, the assassin murmured. Tell him not to claim me yet. Cossar's laugh rustled like dry leaves. Trumpets wailed. A thin, reedy call as Bolton scouts sighted the broken towers.
Ned signal led.
Hillmen heaved levered trunks, with thunderous crack pines toppled across causeway, blocking approach. Bolton columns slowed, torches milling. Command barked, crossbows lifted. From ramparts Ned's archers loosed first volley, fire arrows streaking like comets, finding pitch-doused barricade. Flames whooshed high, reflected in the wide eyes of front ranks. Panic fluttered, but captains whipped lines into advance. Drums thudded, drowning screams of first men who stumbled onto hidden spike mats. They pressed on, shields raised. Ned waited until their weight crowded the choke point. Then hillmen flanked, slipping through waist-deep water along forgotten dike paths, torches in hand. They hurled clay pots of boiling sap and pine pitch over shields. Pots shattered. Sticky fire clung, eating flesh. The night erupted in shrieks. Horses reared, throwing riders into bog. Men thrashed, armor dragging them under. A signal horn blew, countercharge. Burned men and spearwives burst from shadow, axes and spears flashing. Ned led them, Ice's smaller bastard cousin. A long northern greatsword, humming through air. He took first man in mail under the arm, steel grating rib before heart. Blood sprayed hot against snow. Beside him Tala split a helm with bone crack sound, moon-tattooed face wild. The Bolton line wavered, crushed between flame ahead and feral northern tide. Ned's breath steamed within visor. Vision narrowed to kill and step. A bolt ricocheted off his pauldron. He parried a halberd sweep, surged close, rammed pommel into teeth. The soldier crumpled. Hillborn war cries rose, half howl, half him. Bolton rear tried flight. Torches caught wagon tarps. Fire leaping cart to cart until exploding pitch-showered road in liquid ember. Through smoke Ned glimpsed the Bolton standard. A flayed man stitched in pale leather, dropping. He drove forward, smashing aside a sergeant, seized the banner shaft. Splinters cut palm as he wrenched it free, snapped it across knee. A roar ripped from his throat, primal, older than words. Around him allies answered, voices layering until the bog shook with living thunder. By dawn only charred wheels, black water, and crow-picked dead remained. None of Ned's companions had lit the victory fires. Smoke already climbed sky in thick pillars. It would carry word enough. Ned knelt on causeway stones slick with gore, helm dangling from fist. Snowflakes kissed his sweat-damp hair, melted, ran pink. He looked east where the sun pushed gray haze into rose. Forces of Bolton were broken, but lions still lurked beyond the twins and traitor lords still poisoned hearths inside the north. War had many throats yet to sing. Caesar crouched beside him. "We live," he said simply. "For now," Ned answered. He pulled the flayed man patch from broken banner, folded it, tucked into belt. "Evidence. We send riders to Winterfell, word of the moat secured, proof of Bolton's treachery, and call banners from Tallheart, Hornwood, Deepwood. The king in the north will need full teeth." Caesar's brow arched. "You will reveal this to your son? Destroy the myth?" "Not yet." Ned rose, joints aching. "The hooded wolf bears truth only when claws alone no longer suffice. Until then, shadow." Caesar nodded, but his gaze flicked south. "Shadow soon meets sun. Tywin will learn of this route by Raven. He will strike swift. Let him come." Ned's fingers tightened on the blood-sleek sword. "Winter fell once for a heartbeat today. It will fall again, heavier." He turned to his war-shattered comrades, voices raw with exhaustion yet blazing with savage triumph. "Bury our dead with stone cairns high as honor," he told them, "and carve no names. Let the wind speak for them." Heads bowed. Work began. Above, crows circled, black against paling sky, calling harsh benediction. Robb Stark's party reached the edge of the next 6 days out under a moon thinned to a silver sickle. Word of fires on the causeway had drifted north with frightened small folk. Tales of screaming flayed men and a hooded ghost whose sword lit flame. Robb's heart hammered as they splashed through half-frozen channels, eyes scanning for sign. They found the cairns first, 30 low mounds of stone, each topped with a carved wolf head of blackened wood. Snow wreathed them like shrouds. Robb dismounted, gloves trembling as he brushed ice from one wolf carving. Beneath, a smear of crimson paint still clung in eye sockets. A rider called from ahead, "Lord, you must see." Robb followed past charred wagons sucked half into bog to a broken banner staff jutting upright amid peat. From it dangled a flayed man patch, lips sewn shut with gold thread. Pinned above was a scrap of parchment, edges singed. "The north bows to no butcher." That was all. Gray wind patted from shadow, hackles erect, nose quivering. He loosed a low whine, circled the banner once, then threw back his great head and howled. The cry echoed over stinking water, fierce, joyous, grieving all at once. Robb dropped to one knee, body shaking with some unnameable emotion, fear and hope colliding like ice flows. Gray wind nuzzled his shoulder. One of his guards murmured, "My king!" Robb rose slow. "Gather every scrap of this camp. Record wounds, weapons marks. The world will know who struck here." "And the hooded wolf?" the man asked. Robb's gaze swept desolation. Somewhere beyond this mire, perhaps a league or perhaps 100, his father breathed northern air. The knowledge lodged deep, unshakable. "We ride deeper," he said, "until we find the truth with our own eyes, or die in the search." Deep in the bowels of Harrenhal, where the walls wept black water and ghosts of Aegon's fury walked, Roose Bolton sat at a long oaken table flanked by silent guards. Before him stood Tywin's courier, mud-flecked and trembling, reciting the ruin of the causeway in a voice gone ragged from fear. Bolton listened, pale eyes unblinking. When the tale ended, he lifted a slim silver knife and began to flay an apple with exquisite care. 2,000 men, he murmured, as rind peeled away in curling ribbons. Lost to shadows and swamps. Ill news, the courier swallowed. My Lord Lion commands increased haste. He expects Moat Cailin in his grasp by first thaw. Bolton sliced a neat wedge, popped it between colorless lips. Haste breeds error. Yet perhaps error may serve. We shall adjust. He set the knife down. Return to Lord Tywin. Tell him the Dreadfort remains committed. Our next column departs within 3 days, lighter, swifter, with horse archers screened wide. The ghosts of the Wolfswood will find slim pickings. The courier bowed, almost double, relief palpable. Bolton watched him go, eyes shark-flat. When the doors closed, he turned to his steward. Ready the leeching room. My spirits flag. I must lighten myself. The steward dipped head and withdrew. Left alone, Roose Bolton traced a finger through the apple's wet core, smearing juice into whirls. Wolves do not haunt the neck, he whispered to empty stone. Men do, men whose flesh spills red, all the same. His lips twitched upward, the ghost of a smile, though his eyes stayed ice. In King's Landing, Joffrey's reign slipped further into hysteria. Small folk starved while gold cloaks shook down bakers. Whispers of Ned Stark's ghost sowed disquiet even among Red Keep servants. Cersei called it northern superstition. Pycelle wheezed caution about symbols. When Varys at last confirmed the Bolton disaster, speaking in honey-soft tones about supply lines unfortunately compromised, the Queen smashed a goblet across the council table. My son's hold on the throne is mocked by tales of a dead wolf, she hissed. Have we no Sel's words who dare the snows? Even Sel's words fear famine, your grace, Varys soothed. Winter's teeth are sharper than any dagger, and they bite the purse first. He spread plump hands. Yet there are mirrors, shall we say, that can turn rumor to reflection. In Bravos, a certain envoy waits ships to Westeros, an actor famed for mummery. A likeness of Lord Stark, perhaps, presented captive and broken for the court? Such pageantry might smother the ghost. Littlefinger chuckled. Or stoke it. Symbols are tricksy things. His smile flicked to Cersei. Still, imagine the coin those mummers might bring in gate fees. Cersei glared daggers. I want the wolf's head, the real one. Or yours, master of whisperers. Varys bowed, the picture of servile regret. As you command, your grace. The spider will spin. He left the chamber humming the Rains of Castamere beneath his breath, pondering whether any web could truly snare a man who had already died once in the eyes of Westeros. Snow lay knee-deep on the King's Road north of Moat Cailin when fate at last twisted two paths into one. Robb Stark's scouting party had bivouacked in a ruined watchtower, midnight wind knifing through gaps in stone. Guards dozed in cloaks crusted with rime. Gray wind paced, restless, outside the crumbled arch. Ned's band came under cover of storm, wolf pelts white with blown snow. Coster saw gray wind first, a spectral shape looming amid drifts, eyes gold as old fire. He halted the column. Ned threaded forward through swirling flakes. The dire wolf bristled, lips peeling. Then his stance shifted, snout lifted, nostrils flaring, and he loosed a low whine. Recognition. Inside the tower, Robb woke to Finley's shout. He seized sword and dashed barefoot across cold stone. Gray wind threw himself against the door in frantic excitement. Robb yanked it open and stared at a hooded man standing solitary in stormlight, snow glittering on cloak. Around him, half-seen warriors lingered in pine shadow, but the world shrank to two figures, son and father. The hood fell. Ned Stark's face, leaner now, seamed with fresh scars yet unmistakably, achingly familiar, emerged. Time fractured. Robb could not breathe. For a heartbeat neither spoke. Then Robb dropped his sword with a clatter, stumbling forward. He fell to knees in snow and seized his father's cloak like a drowning boy clutches driftwood. Ned's gloves cupped his son's skull. He bent, pressing brow to red-tangled hair. No tears came. There was only the roaring silence of completed circle. At last Robb's voice cracked through the hush. They told us you. I know. Ned's tone was soft as snow's fall, rough as stone. I am sorry. Gray wind nosed between them, barking low joy. Robb rose, eyes blazing with a storm of questions. But Ned shook his head. Not here. Walls may have ears even in ruin. Bring your men. They gathered in the watchtower's hollow keep, torches guttering. Robb's riders stared wide-eyed at the legend breathing among them. Ned's hillmen eyed Stark guards with cautious respect. Snow melted to runnels across pitted flagstones. Caesar leaned in archway, watchful. Ned faced his son by dusk-dim flame. "You must call banners for open war when the moment is right," he said. "But first the rot in our own woods must be cut. Bolton, maybe others. We strike softly still, until northern hearts know which drum to follow." Robb's jaw worked. "They will follow the wolf they believe fell. If they learn the truth, then the truth must wait." Ned's gaze did not waver. "The ghost you have allowed to guide you is useful yet. Let it stalk while you forge a sword of men and purpose. When you take that field, do it with fear behind your foe and certainty behind your own." Robb looked as though he had bitten steel. "How do I ride to war while my father fights in shadow? How do I ask men to die for a cause built on half-truth? Because the cause is whole even if the story is not. I died on Baelor's steps that day. To them, to Southron eyes, I am bones and dust. Let them keep their corpse. You, king in the north," he laid a hand over Robb's racing heart, "must live." The title rang strange in that broken hall. Robb's mouth opened, closed. At last he nodded, certain but sorrow-shadowed. He would bear this weight. They spoke long. Of supply, of Karstark fury, of Frey treachery brewing at the Twins, of Stark daughters still held like prizes in the Red Keep. Ned listened, face drawn tight when Robb told of Sansa's letters begging obedience, of Arya vanished. A father's pain flickered but was banked behind iron purpose. "Your sisters are pieces in Joffrey's game," Ned said. "We will move our own." He cast a glance at Caesar, who inclined his head. Plans nested within plans. Before dawn they parted. Robb's party headed north, gray wind trotting sidelong, casting backward glances. Ned's rebels veered west into deeper forest, vanishings in storm. Robb watched until snow swallowed them. His breath plumed white. The world had changed again, but the path ahead sharpened. South to Riverrun to rally Tully spears, east to parley or duel with Frey ambitions. Then the men of the north would shake the green kingdoms like a wolf shakes a stag by throat. And somewhere unseen his father carved that path first, a blade of silence. Bolton moved, swift and secret, replacing shattered vanguard with fresh mercenaries. Lockstep sellswards from Myr, their curving blades etched with red lacquer. They glided along snowed-in roads, slaying any who dared raise cry. Yet each night a handful vanished, throats slit, tents smeared with wolf's blood sign. Fear gnawed, discipline frayed. Rumors of pay chests stolen cut loyalty thinner. By the time Roose reached the fortress crossroads at the ruined Stony Shore watchpost, half his captains were dead, deserting, or at each other's throats, and Tywin's ravens demanded progress. Bolton ordered a dawn march and found every horse lamed, fetlocks bled by razor wire trap. He slit one groom's belly in fury, but entrails did not mend hooves. The march stalled for shoes and poultices. Snow deepened, supplies dwindled. Men whispered of hooded wolf spirits filling horses with terror. Roose listened to whispers like a gourmand tasting stew, searching for the spice of truth. When he could not find it, he tasted leech blood instead, letting the warm seep gather in brass bowls until calm returned. He would not be bested by a ghost. Word of these delays seeped north on ragtrade wagons and fisher skiffs. In White Harbor, Lord Wyman Manderley feasted a dozen minor lords beneath murals of mermaids and bloody hands, serving lamprey pie stuffed with information. Bolton's failure, Stark ghost stories, lion impatience. The fat lord laughed booming thunder. "The north is a cauldron," he declared, jowls quivering. "Time to stoke the fire. I will send my knights to Winterfell at once." His maester objected. Manderley owed fealty to the Iron Throne. Wyman silenced him by tipping the man's own goblet until wine stained beard and robe alike. "The Iron Throne rests on broken swords. I prefer a chair stout enough to hold me." Laughter roared. That night, 3 fast cogs slipped harbor under black sails, holds rattling with bladed oarsmen singing of winter freedoms. Beyond the wall, unheard by Southron ears, Mance Rayder sat in a ring of stones, watching aurora flicker green and violet. The free folk whispered of changes on warm winds, of southern lords at each other's throats. Their king beyond the wall listened. When wolves and lions claw each other blind, he mused, the door may lie unbarred. He sent runners to gather clans, though the chill of others lingered even in thought. Winter crawled on many legs. In a frozen cellar beneath a long abandoned sept outside Barrowton, Arya Stark stood sword-straight before a slab of rough-hewn wood. Yoren's cloak lay folded on a crate. Tears had long since dried. In her hands needle gleamed. Across from her casser held a single wax candle. The pointy end, yes, he said, eyes inscrutable. But a blade is more than point. Show me water. She danced then, water dancing, Sirio's gift, feet whispering on straw, steel flickering through candle shadows. Sweat sheened her brow though air was ice. At last Casser nodded, doused candle with pinch of fingers. In darkness, see by breath. She closed eyes, listened. Heartbeats in cellar, her own, Casser steady, slow as snowfall, and further off another, quicker, nervous. She pivoted silent, thrust. Needle-kissed throat of a man she had not known stood in doorway, a Riverlander turncloak hired to spy. He gurgled. She stepped back before blood could stain boots. Casser inclined head. Many-faced God will have his due. But this face, he tapped her cheek, must stay hidden until the song's last verse. Remember. Arya wiped blade. I remember. She thought of Bran's ravens, of ghost father walking in snow. Memory burned hot. So war became tapestry, threads woven in shadow, each not unseen until pattern revealed. The hooded wolf struck again on the lonely hills, freeing Karstark captives bound for Harrenhal. In Deepwood Moat, Lady Sibel Glover received a raven feather black as sin tied round a wolf's tooth. Next dawn she raised her banners. Across Bear Island, Meege Mormont melted into sea mist with 50 she-bears destined for stony shore ambushes. Rumor outpaced reality. Some swore the ghost could vanish into tree trunks, others that his dire wolf pack numbered 100. Fear loosened Bolton alliances like Autumn W. I&D shears yellow leaves, yet fear cuts two ways. Tywin's spies stole fragments of truth, pieced outlines. He dispatched Ser Adam Marbrand with 500 seasoned outriders, promising lordship and gold for the hooded wolf's head. They rode hard, killing without quarter every man found armed in gray.
Village burned.
Small folk hung from beech limbs beneath lion banners. Songs turned darker. Ned heard of one such atrocity at Sorin's mill. 23 dead, 2 children. He knelt by the charred doorway, jaw clenched till teeth creaked. No more shadows, he told Casser. If we slink, lions slay lambs in our place. Then step into light and risk bolt through heart, Casser warned. A worthy bargain. Ned rose, eyes bleak. We ride tonight, swift and loud. They rode. Under black moon, hillmen swarmed Marbrand's camp in 3 prongs, horn blasts echoing. Talabearclaw's spearwives cut pickets. Burned men flung torches onto hay. Manderly archers sought captains' tents. Ned led center, greatsword whistling. Ser Adam met him in parry. Lion steel flashed, sparks flew. They fought through stampeding horses, between wagons collapsing in flame. Marbrand pressed strong, but Ned's fury burned winter cold. A faint high, twist low, lion helm rang as pommel cracked jaw. Marbrand reeled. Ned's blade punched mail at armpit. Blood burst black. He yanked free. The night slumped to mud. Silence followed, broken only by crackle of burning stores. Ned stood beneath blazing standard, breath fogging, face speckled crimson. He lifted Marbrand's sword, gilded lion pommel, and drove it into earth. Let Tywin hear roar turned whimper. Come the dawn, survivors found message carved on a charred shield. Winter feeds on pride. They fled south en route, spreading tale of a living Stark who wielded ghosts and fire alike. At Harrenhal, the news struck like hammer to rotten beam. Roose Bolton stared at scroll while leeches squirmed in crystal bowl, fat with his blood.
Ser Marbrand's lan.
Host shattered. He folded parchment, expression placid as pond ice. Lord Tywin will recall troops to counter. His age shifted. Shall we proceed with joining at the Twins? Bolton's gaze drifted to tapestry depicting a flayed wolf. Yes, war may be lost in fields, but won at feasts. The faint smile ghosted lips. Send word to Lord Walder. Tell him Roose Bolton shall bring gifts of promise, and a bride's cloak red as flayed skin. North of the Twins, Robb Stark's main host now marched. Tall pines bowed under banners of direwolf, merman, bear, moose, and many lesser crests. Drums pulsed heartbeat for miles. Scouts rode in widescreen, yet still lion harassments cut vanguard. Numbers bled daily. Robb's council urged swift assault on the Twins to secure crossing, but Walder Frey dickered for greater demands. Edmure Tully's concessions, marriage pacts, wards. Time slipped. As campfires dotted the green beyond Frey turf, a hooded rider approached on weary courser, bearing a single strip of flayed skin pinned to lion blade. It reached Robb's hands. He read message inscribed in brown dried blood. Rivers drown vipers when wolves howl at their banks. His advisors puzzled. Robb understood. The traitor hides behind marriage and river. Beware, Frey Bolton packed. He strode into command tent, gray wind at heels. Send riders under truce banner, he told Galbart. Inform Lord Frey we accept guest right on the morrow. He and I alone, unarmed, in his own hall. The council erupted. Theon called it madness. Meage Mormont offered to escort with steel. Robb shook his head. If Frey means to betray, let him do so before he tastes our blood. If he honors guest right, path opens.
Igo Kropka.
At dusk he crossed the bridge, a single banner of direwolf preceding. Frey awaited in candlelit hall, thin lips twitching. Words passed, histories may record them differently. But when Robb emerged 3 hours later, the twin towers sounded courtyard horns in salute, and 12 wagons of grain rolled north before dawn. Neither Frey nor Stark spoke again of what passed, but lined skins of Boltons hung alongside rusted bells on each gatehouse come sunrise. Some say a hooded phantom visited Lord Walder that night, whispering old Dreadfort sins into brittle ears until dawn's light showed Frey's sheets soaked in cold sweat. Others claim Frey simply smelled profit heavier on one side. Regardless, by week's end Robb Stark's entire host crossed the Green Fork unmolested, banners snapping in winter wind. Arya departed Barrowton disguised as Tanner's boy, Kosser leading. Her heart pounded with dog-like joy at news of Robb alive. Father alive, winter's banners unfurled. But Father's command bore heavier than needle. Ride east, find shrouded friend in Dragonstone, one Stannis Baratheon, and carry truth of Joffrey's bastardy, signed in Ned Stark's own hand. War needed more than swords. It needed legitimacy's blade. So Arya bit her lip, donned wool cap, and rode a shaggy pony through snowstorms, chanting her list each night to keep the cold out. She whispered the hound's name last, but softer each time. Catelyn Stark sighted her son's banners inland from Seaguard and felt tears freeze on cheeks. She had ridden hard from Riverrun with Brynden Tully, alliances half-formed in wake of Hoster's fading health. Now she saw dire wolves and new homes still breathed. But when Robb embraced her, she glimpsed sharp strain in his eyes. "Father lives," he told her in private. She swayed hand to mouth. "Or something of him that fights. Yet we must keep the mask." He explained whispers, ghosts, Bolton betrayal. Catelyn listened, heart torn between wildfire joy and dread. When he finished, she nodded once. Fierce. "Then we guard this secret with every sinew," she said. "But no, my son. Secrets corrode the soul. Be wary." He kissed her brow. "I will." Many miles south, Varys unrolled fresh parchment bearing cipher from Norwest. He read, sighing. "The game grows wild." He fetched a thin stiletto, pricked finger, dabbed a single drop onto parchment corner. A red seal not unlike blood, though no wax touched flame. Spider seal for utmost urgency. He breathed, "Queen of Thorns may wish to see the storm rising." His little birds flew. Ned Stark stood atop crest above Last River, moonlight silvering gaunt face. Below, the river ran black around ice floes. Beyond it, the Dreadfort's banners fluttered atop pale stone walls. He had come full circle. With him waited 500 men sworn by blood or vengeance, torches banked. The plan was simple and terrible. Slip through forgotten cistern revealed by Maester's stolen maps, seize gatehouse, raise direwolf banner before dawn. But victory demanded distraction at main Barbican. For that, Caesar would lead a separate vanguard disguised as captured hillmen offering peace. "If I fall," Caesar said beforehand, "honor debts owed." "You have my word," Ned replied. Caesar smiled behind mask. "Perhaps the many-faced god will take others first." Night groaned as they advanced. Snow began again, fat flakes drifting. Ned's heart thudded slow, deliberate. Beyond the walls, his old friend turned turncoat Wade leeches. Soon he would know a different bleed. Ned's fingers brushed pouch where Stark children's faces lived in memory. He breathed their names through beard, a litany against fear. Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon. Then he stepped into icy water, sword across back, and waded toward destiny. Far behind, in Winterfell's Godswood, a great direwolf raised its muzzle and sang, voice rolling over ramparts, riding cold winds south. Every wolf from Skagos to Stoneshore answered, a thousand-throated promise that winter's courts were convened and judgment galloped upon frost-laden hooves. And in King's Landing, Joffrey Baratheon awoke screaming from dreams of gray ghosts, to find his chamber chill with wind like knives, though all braziers blazed. Snow whispered like crushed glass beneath Ned Stark's boots as he slid into the half-collapsed drainage culvert that tunneled under the Dreadfort's southern wall. The water was knee-deep, half ice, half-fetid sludge that reeked of rot and old offal. Behind him 20 hand-picked men followed in single file. Hill spearmen first, then Manderly archers, last a pair of silent burned men gripping hooked axes. No torches, only the dying glow of the moon slit through the culvert's grate, turning every breath to smoke. The tunnel ran straight for 30 yards, then rose by crumbling stone steps into a forgotten cistern. Ned mounted first, fingers splayed to feel vibrations in the rock. Nothing yet. Somewhere far beyond the curtain of walls and ports, Caesar was enacting the feint. A cage wagon rattling toward the main Barbican. 6 captives chained in plain sight, all hooded. Ned had chosen them himself, veterans quick with short blades and quicker with lies. They would spill enough noise to drag Bolton eyes away from this dark corner. After that, the many-faced god would decide whose mask slipped. The cistern ceiling vaulted overhead like a stone ribcage, damp with lichen. An iron ladder rose toward a corroded hatch. Ned signaled with 2 fingers. A slim spearman named Rusk scurried up, bent to the hinge. Minutes ticked like dripped water. Then the hatch eased open and cold air washed down, smelling of horse piss and hay. Rusk glanced back, grinning. A stable. Ned tugged his cloak tighter and climbed. They emerged behind rows of stall walls, pitch black save for a single lantern hung near the double doors. Horses shifted, snorted uneasily. Perhaps they smelled the blood on Ned's mail or sensed something feral beneath the hood. He whispered the old Winterfell lullaby, soft as rising frost, until the beasts stilled. Then he motioned. Men fanned through shadow, cutting britching ropes and looping leads around stall beams. At his silent count, they slapped rumps with flat of palms. 16 warhorses shrieked and stampeded, thunderclap hooves shattering the quiet as they bolted through the splintering doors into the yard beyond. Shouts erupted outside. Ned darted to a side postern, eased it open a finger's breadth, peered. The yard was chaos. Grooms dashing after maddened horses, sleepy guards stumbling half-armored. A few crossbows waved uselessly. Torches flared to life in wall sconces, throwing long, frantic shadows. Perfect. He led his party across the dark fringe of yard to a small servant's stair that coiled up the southeast tower. They moved like smoke. On the first landing, a yawning groom almost walked into them. One burned man's cord flashed out, jerked the fellow into a crook of elbow, throttled him silent. Another flight up brought them to a guardroom. 2 men dicing, laughing. Ned signaled 3, 2, 1. Arrows whispered. Dice still rattled when the bodies slumped. Beyond lay the gatehouse mechanism chamber. Iron-shod wheels, counterweights, the heavy winch that controlled the main portcullis. Lanterns guttered on hooks, illuminating dust motes. 2 Bolton sergeants paced opposite ends, warming hands over a brazier. Ned stepped from the stair, blade point down to mute footfalls. A loose board creaked. One sergeant turned, mouth parting. His spear punched through lung before sound escaped. The second staggered, reaching for horn. Ned's sword intersected wrist, severing it in spray, then swept back across neck in the same breath. Silence reclaimed the room. "Chalk the cogs," Ned murmured. Rusk produced a pouch of fine river sand mixed with fat. He stuffed handfuls into the winch gears, jamming teeth. Another man wedged iron pins into counterweight pulleys. The portcullis could still be raised, but only slowly, screeching loud as a dying boar. Supplies enough bought. They spilled down the interior passage that slanted toward the inner ward. Through arrow loop slits, Ned saw the other half of their plan bloom. Distant flashes at the barbican. Flaming arrows arcing into courtyard banners. Roar of angered Dreadfort men. Coster's ruse had taken root. Now to cut it deep. A broad stair ended at the great hall's antechamber. Tapestries of pink-skinned victims lined cedar walls. Crimson torchlight licking flayed flesh embroidered in silk. A sickly sweet spice burned in braziers, so strong Ned gagged. Ramsay Snow's taste, no doubt. At the arched doors, 2 mailed sentries stood perplexed, heads cocked to distant tumult. Hillmen rushed them in silence, daggers puncturing clinks between gorget rings. One dropped gurgling. The other had breath to half-shout, but Spearwife Tala buried her axe in helm before note rose. Inside, roasting fires lay banked low. For long tables, benches empty. At high dais, a pair of musicians slept curled under bearskin. Ned's men ghosted through. He pointed upward, minstrel's gallery. Rusk and an archer ascended, bows ready. The rest followed Ned into a side passage that led toward Lord's apartments. The hallway stank of leech water and vinegar. Candles guttered in iron claws. They passed an ajar door revealing a chamber-lined floor to rafters with glass jars. Hearts, tongues, pale coils Ned would not name floating in murk.
Oversweet perfume veille de corruption.
He swallowed bile, pressed on. Voices drifted ahead, low and controlled. He slowed, signaled stop, edged to keyhole in carved elm door. Within a lamplit solar, Roose Bolton reclined on velvet-cushioned chair, white leech marks fresh on neck. Opposite, a leather-clad captain reported, breath fogging. Behind Roose stood a tall youth with greasy black hair and pale eyes, Ramsay Snow, idly stropping a curved skinning blade. Ned's pulse thudded. "Hold the yard," Roose murmured. "The disturbance is diversion. Double watch on the kennel tunnel. If the intruders breach the keep, fall back to the cells with the hostages. Kill them if capture seems likely." "Lord," the captain bowed. "Hostages, who?" Ned's stomach iced. He stepped back, whispered orders. Tala and 2 burned men circle by servant hall, bar outer door. Archers cover corridor. Hill spears advance with him. Hearts thrummed. He kicked the solar door wide. Bolton's head snapped up, calm eyes widening a hair. Ramsay's grin split, eager. The captain reached for sword but took Rusk's arrow through throat. He toppled, gagging. Ned stepped into firelight, hood falling. "Roose, the lord of the Dreadfort rose like mist. So the ghost has flesh." His voice remained soft as moldcloth.
Eddard Stark, I presume.
"These walls belong to the north," Ned said. "Your banners fall tonight." "They already fell long ago," Ramsay chuckled, blade twitching. "You only never heard the scream." Ned ignored him. "Call off your men. Surrender and answer for treason to your liege." Roose stroked fingertips across leech scar. "Treason is a matter of perspective. I find the lion's gold glitters bright even in winter gloom. Yet coin is but one metal. You bring another." He tilted head. "Ned Stark, dying once made you legend. Living twice may unmake you. Enough words. Ned advanced. Ramsay leapt forward shrieking. Their blades rang. Ramsay's style was frantic cruelty. Slashes aimed for face, groin, trying to carve pain. Ned parried, countered with disciplined arcs, channeling anger into ice.
Ramsay langt, point græsing ned ad slåhej. Ned pivotet, pommel smashed smævede.
Teeth spattered boards. Ramsay staggered, hissed through bloodstrings. Bolton moved too. Hand slipping within sleeve for slim dirk tipped with dark smear. An arrow sprouted in his forearm before blade cleared. He hissed, snapping shaft. Rusk knocked second arrow. Ramsay fainted high, spun low. His knife kissed Ned's calf. Pain lanced. Ned answered with downward cleave that bit into the bastard's shoulder diagonal to chest. Leather split, blood fountain. Ramsay backpedaled shrieking. Ned pressed but Roose loosed the dirk, whipping seaside over his son's head toward Ned's heart. Hill spearman Kedge flung himself sideways, dirk burying deep between ribs. He coughed scarlet, fell. Ned roared, stamped toward Roose, only to see the Lord of the Dreadfort twist aside into a secret door behind tapestry. Tala's voice rang from hall. More coming! Footsteps thundered. Ned spared glance. Ramsay crawled toward Brazier, clutching wounded arm, eyes wild. Ned strode, booted him over onto back, sliced hamstring. Ramsay shrieked anew, blade clattering. Ned turned as squad of Bolton guards stormed corridor. Arrows from gallery hammered first ranks. Hill spears lunged. Fight churned brutal, disharmonious. Amid clash, Ned saw Roose slip down hidden stair beyond tapestry, blood-dripping elbow. He pursued, leaving comrades to hold. The stair spiraled tight, torches sputtering. At bottom, a dank hall branched. Roose limped left, through iron-bound door banging shut. Ned slammed after, burst into circular chamber ringed with cages. Hostages, 2 washerwomen, a gray-bearded Karstark retainer, 3 children, gagged, chained. Roose stood among them, dirk now in other hand poised at a child's throat. One more step, he whispered.
Ned froze, blide lowered.
The child sobbed, wide eyes reflecting torch. Ned measured distance, 8 paces, obstacles of straw and shackles. Too far. Voice boomed behind. Lord Bolton. Cosser slipped through doorway. 2 crossbows aimed by black-hooded Confederates at Roose's spine. Looks like decoy plan survived. Roose's gaze flicked, blink of calculation. He pressed dirk, skin pricked bead of blood on child's neck. Cosser's tone never wavered. Drop blade, kneel, hands high. Roose smiled, serpent slight, released hostage, but flung dirk at near crossbowman. Steel sank eye. In same breath, he hauled hidden lever. Chains overhead jerked. A portcullis crashed down between him and Ned. Smoke puffed from vents. Torches guttered to dark. Roose vanished through side grate sliding shut. Cosser cursed, loosed bolt, but too late. Ned rattled bars.
No vai.
He exhaled through teeth, forced calm. Free them, he ordered. His men hurried to keys on wall, unlocking shackles, cutting gags. The Karstark retainer bowed raggedly. My lord, thought Stark blood ended. Ends tonight only for traitors. Ned knelt to the children, wiped tears, promised safe hearth. Their hands clutched his furs with desperate trust. From above came muffled clangs, battle still raging. Ned turned to Cosser. Roose heads for the kennels. Secret Worm rode their meets east postern. Can you intercept? I am Shadow, Cosser replied, already moving. Bring him. Ned's voice chilled stone. He gathered hostages, led them back up stair to solar corridor now strewn with Bolton bodies. Rusk still stood guard, bleeding from nick above brow. Tala emerged, dragging Ramsay by collar like spoiled pup, bastard's wound bound with rough rag. He squeals but lives, she said. Chain him. Ned's gaze bored into Ramsay. The bastard quailed, eyes flicking doorward, perhaps hoping father's return. When iron cools, call Meege Mormont. She has questions about flayed daughters. Screams rose anew from ward. The portcullis Ned had sabotaged earlier shrieked as defenders tried to lift it. Jammed gears shrilled, snapped. A roar of panic followed. The western gate, left unmolested, now stood open. From outside horns sounded. Meage's reinforcements arriving up the river track. Perfect timing. He silently thanked whatever gods liked wolves. Hours blurred. Ned directed triage, secured halls, oversaw dousing of tapestries before they burned. At dawn, pink light glazed bastion walls, now flying direwolf standard flanked by merman and bear. Bolton dead lay heaped tall as herricks. Survivors knelt bound. Ramsay sulked in kennel cage, mumbling threats. Roose was nowhere. Casa returned at sunrise, boots crusted mud. He shook head once. Worm road met frozen. River. Tracks vanish. A boat stolen. Ned shut eyes, let disappointment stab then fade. He'll run to Harrenhal or the twins. Raven every northern holdfast. Bolton named outlaw, reward to neck. He turned to Tala. Hang the flayed man's sigil upside down at each gate. Let riders spread word. She grinned feral. By mid-morning ravens flew thick, bearing Ned's decree and proofs. Tywin's letters, ledger of grain theft, witness statements. The North would choose sides now, no excuse for Grey. In the Great Hall a council convened. Robb arrived by dusk, weary from forced ride. Grey wind bounded first through shattered door, muzzle snuffling blood tang, but calmed at Ned's steady hand upon scruff. Father and son clasped forearms before assembled lords. Manderley, Mormont, Karstark heir Harrenhal newly freed, Deepwood's young Lord Roderick. Gasps echoed, eyes welled. Some knelt. Ned raised them. No kneeling, he said. I am a shade when seen by Southrons. Let that tale persist. Here, I am only a voice. He laid parchment maps across table. Tywin Lannister withdraws west to secure Harrenhal and river crossings. Bolton slithers to him. Fry stands untrustworthy. Our path. Seal the neck, hold Moat Cailin, then punch south before lions regroup. Strike hard at Harrenhal to cut Lord Tywin's head before Snowberry's army. Robb listened, brow furrowed. We lack numbers to siege Harrenhal. True, Ned answered. So we draw him out, bait with rumor of King Renly's approach from Stormlands. Varys can see to whispers. Littlefinger will carry them for coin. While Tywin pivots, our outriders raid his forage lines, torch stockpiles. Winter will march beside us. There was steel certainty in his tone that silenced dissent. He unrolled second scroll. Stannis's letter gleaned by Davos's smuggled courier. Proof of Joffrey's bastardy. Catelyn's breath caught. If the realm sees this, Stannis must proclaim, Ned said. And he will if we aid his claim. He met Robb's gaze. 2 kings may break a throne easier than one. Robb's jaw tightened. King of the North bowing ally? Ned spoke lower. Wolves do not rule the Reach or the Stormlands. We protect our own by ending Cersei's brood, not wearing crowns of straw. Robb exhaled slow. I will hear Stannis, if he will hear the North. Agreement settled. That night, around victory fires, songs rose half exultant, half mournful for lost kin. Ned walked parapets alone, wind combing his hair. Snow swirled. He thought of Roose slipping cold fingers around Realm's throat, of Tywin coiled like lion in tower, of Cersei's spite brewing poisons. He toyed with old direwolf seal ring, once symbol of absolute law, now tool of rebellion. Cossar joined him on wall walk, silent a time. The many-faced god claims sacrifice, he murmured at last. You stole one beyond tithe. Price may come. I will pay, Ned whispered to darkness. Would you pay in son's blood? Wind moaned through battlements. Ned closed fist around ring. Better fathers. Cossar offered no comfort, only stood with him until dawn peeled first light across Snow's Cape, a world blood-washed but unbowed. 2 days later, ravens carried proclamation to every mead hall from Hornwood to Skagos. The bastard Ramsay Snow is prisoner. Roose Bolton condemned outlaw. Dreadfort banners fall. Traitors will taste winter most bitter. Some lords cheered, others quaked. At Carhold they rang iron bells. At the Dreadfort's lesser holdfasts, stewards burned signboards and fled. South, Tywin crushed scroll in fist. So the wolf bears teeth. Behind cold eyes, plans recalculated. He commanded Gregor Clegane ride to Maidenpool, torch any ship bearing Stark or Manderley crew. But storms hammered narrow sea. Lightning split masts, sent blackened hulks to seabed. Some sailors swore they saw a pale direwolf leaping atop waves, eyes lantern-bright, driving wind itself. Sailor tales perhaps, yet fear is fuel. In Bravos, Arya reached the Sea Lord's piazza disguised now as cabin boy. Storms washed canals. Anti-frost fires glimmered. She delivered Ned's sealed message to Salador San's adjutant, as instructed. Coins changed hands. A swift galley prepared to sail for Dragonstone. Arya planned stowaway, but Caesar's second agent blocked her path, offering cloak of colors shifting with light. "You have other road," she told the wolf girl. "One that walks through many faces." Arya fingered cloak fringe, felt hidden knives stitched in lining. She thought of Syrio, of Needle and Water's grace, and of Joffrey's laugh. She nodded. Behind her, Bravo's bells told memory into night. Back in the north, Ned orchestrated a winter campaign of whispers, sending small cells to harry lion columns, freeing more captives, sowing rumor that armies of Iceborne Rangers would descend from Wall. At Queen's Crown, 10 Bolton loyalists were found crucified upside down. Sign reading, "We do not flay the living, but we bury the dead." Message clear, mercy remained yet. He met Robb often, but in secret. Ruined watchtowers, cave behind waterfall, the undercroft of September at Torrens Square. Each time he masked face with soot, traveled with only Caesar and one rider. Robb, grown into grim leadership, accepted the secrecy though it gnawed. Mother, he confided, told him fathers protect sons, but he never knew fathers must hide behind them too.
Ned clasped shoulder.
Honor dies younger than kings. Let mine serve in shadow so yours may shine. Sometimes they joked, memories of Bran climbing, Rick and toddling. Once they embraced simply, silent, until duty drew them apart again like breaking ice flows. Love persisted, but distance sharpened. In late frost month, ravens arrived from the wall. Lord Commander Mormont beseeching southern aid. For dead now walked with spears of cold flame, fist of the first men lost. Ned read letter by fire in captured Dreadfort chamber, fist tightening. War of Thrones suddenly paled before night's true hunger. He summoned Robb, Manderley, Meege. Men quarrel in spring, winter devours all. We must send aid to Castle Black. Robb balked. If we split force, Tywin may strike. Tywin's sword cannot kill what is already dead, Ned replied. But if Wall falls, lion and wolf alike bleed under endless dark. Council argued. Yet when dawn broke, 1,000 spears pledged ride north under Meege Mormont's command. Wagons laden with obsidian arrowheads Manderley dredgers had found in sea caves. Catelyn wept to see supplies leave while sons marched toward danger south. But she understood. Mothers measure victory by children's dawns. Roose Bolton reached Harrenhal ragged, half-starved, escorted by 50 mercenaries. Tywin accepted him with frost-thin politeness, assured him of reward if he delivered the north in snow-sealed bag. Roose bowed, eyes hooded, plans brewed, wedding, rivers of wine, rivers of blood. He whispered to Walder Frey of red banners, redder floors. Frey listened, skin papery as old vellum, and licked lips. Spring on calendars never touched Westeros that year. Snowstorms thudded roofs into midsummer. Crops failed. Wolves roamed riverlands. Fisherfolk whispered the old rhyme. When direwolf hunts and kraken thrashes, night snow shall blanket king and ashes. Some laughed, but fewer each week. In King's Landing, Cersei tightened rations, raised taxes. Riot sparks flew. Joffrey ordered tongue of every rioter removed. Executioners ran out of knives. High Septon preached this winter a scourge from gods to punish bastard king's sin. He died choking on clotted wine next eve. Rumor claimed an invisible wolf clawed his throat. At Moat Cailin, Ned met giants of stone. The Rhyolite towers whispered battles long dead, yet still they guarded causeway. He studied cracks, planned repairs, Robb's masons would set new hoardings. He traced grooves of ancient runes, wondering if first men for new dread to come. He left a spear of weirwood on altar, silent prayer for guidance. While there, a hooded courier reached him, Stannis's sigil wax, the letter within crisp, truth of bastardy accepted. Baratheon banners will march when snows allow. Wolf may have south flank if Wolf bends knee to rightful king.
Ned folded parchment.
He penned reply, wolves kneel to none yet bend win to ally. Prove right with steel at Harrenhal, then speak of oaths. He signed only with dire wolf drawn in ash. Courier gone, Ned turned to Cossar. South fire soon. The faceless man's eyes gleamed behind mask. And winter answers, he said. Paths converged, threads thicker. Robb's host encamped 3 leagues outside Harrenhal, screened by alder groves. Stannis approached from Stormlands, banners of fiery heart, reinforced by cell sails of Salador. Tywin's scouts saw neither until both revealed like twin blades closing scissor. In inner keep of Harrenhal, Roose Bolton poured dark wine for the lion. Let Fry host your baggage train at the twins. Withdraw west, feign weakness, pull young wolf deep. At wedding feast we cut his banners from under. Tywin stroked beard. A risky noose, Bolton smiled. But snug, the lion considered. That night, flames bloomed in outer baileys. Northern raiders torched hay stores, fled before pursuit. Lannister tempers frayed. Roose watched from Widow's Walk, expression unreadable. Perhaps he sensed a bigger blaze still kindling. Ned's shadow host, whittled to 300 but seasoned, circled Harrenhal like silent wind, cutting couriers, poisoning wells. Twice Tywin sent Gregor Clegane to root ghosts. Twice he returned with ashes of empty camps. Frustration sweated from every lion helm. And always the rumor preceded. The dead Stark walks, flays the flayer, hunts the lion. Even Lannister warhorses skittish at distant howls. On the 3rd night of siege, snow fell so thick campfires seemed submerged in milk. Ned crouched with Robb and Stannis inside abandoned granary, crude map weighted by stones. Grey Wind and Stannis's dog, Proudwing, paced uneasy round outside. Robb tapped line of trenches. Dawn assault on western breach while Stannis storms lakeside. Stannis grunted approval. My men will burn any ship that tries slip south. Ned studied layout. Gregor Clegane remains hammer. We lure him out on causeway, break under archer rain. And if Bolton stirs vipers at twins? Robb asked. Ned's smile held no mirth. Bolton has viper fangs, but Fry provides basket. I intend crush both. He unrolled second map. Path north to twins marked by secret ferry crossing. Stannis lifted brow. A strike behind walls during wedding? The Red Twins will host a redder feast, Ned said. Snow swirled through roof gaps, settling on parchment like white ash. Plans solidified. Battle of Harrenhal dawned under bruised sky. Horns blared, wolves howled. Stannis' scorpions hurled stone into Lake Tower. Robb's spearmen surged through Willow Trench. Ned's shadows cut behind lines. At second bell Gregor charged gate to meet Robb, but found causeway greased with lard hidden under powdery snow. Warhorses skidded, colliding. Archers loosed from blind pits. Arrows fell like sleet. Gregor roared, hacked bodies clear, pressed on, but Grey Wind sprang, hamstringing mount. The mountain tumbled, rose swinging greatsword, meeting Robb's guard. They dueled amid sludge, sparks lighting gloom. Robb's blade scored chest, yet Gregor's strength hammered back. Teetered until Ned appeared, sword intercepting fatal blow. Father and son fought side by side, dance of ice and youth. Grey Wind fainted, sank teeth into Clegane's calf. A thrust, a twist, a howl. Gregor fell to knees. Robb's sword pierced Gorget. The mountain toppled, earth shaking one last time. Lion banners wavered. Lannister captains saw gatehouse aflame, Lake Tower collapsing under Stannis' catapult chainlash. Bolton's held inner ward, but Stannis' cell sails clambered battlements. Rumor of Stark ghost within walls shattered courage. By dusk Tywin ordered retreat west. Ordered, but only half his host escaped as ice closed river crossing. Roose vanished again, leaving Ramsay's absence explanation enough. Harrenhal fell. Inside throne room of melted stone, Ned, Robb, and Stannis met amid torch smoke. Stannis accepted Gregor's head, blood still steaming, as gift for justice of king's blood spilled. He stared, expression granite, then nodded once. The throne yet sits Joffrey spawn. Unite armies. We ride at dawn. Robb's chin lifted. We ride, but north kneels to none. Then bend thrones, Stannis snapped. Do as you will after war. Caitlin stepped forward, voice calm. Win first, crown after. Men breathed, tension easing like drawn bowstring released. Ned watched Stannis' eyes and saw hunger colder than any north storm. Yet lesser of evils, perhaps. Dead men to the north, lions to the west, vipers in riverlands. Alliances were shields of thin ice. Still, better a thin shield than none. Roose escaped with few men to twins. Their Walder Frey fated him with hot wine, promised daughter for solace. Roose accepted, but eyes stayed on door, expecting wolves behind every smile. He slept little, dreamt a flayed wolf howling out of skin to devour. Night before March, Ned sat alone among Harrenhal's burned library ruins, parchments curling in dying fire. He found a scrap of Septon Chronicle, tale of Bran the Builder raising wall against wild night. He traced faded runes, heartbeat steady. Cycle turned again. Darkness moved south, kingdoms squabbled. But wolves learned, stones remembered, ice forgave nothing. Footsteps. Robb. He lowered onto broken bench beside his father. No words. They watched sparks drift. After a long while, Robb said, "When war is done, will you stand in Winterfell again?" "If winter permits." Robb swallowed. "And if it doesn't? Then remember I walked for you." Ned squeezed his son's shoulder. "For all of you, and for better dawn." Robb's eyes shone. "We'll see that dawn together." Ned hoped so, but made no promise. Dawn drums thudded next cold morning. Northmen, Stormlanders, and Riverlord levies formed columns stretching beyond horizon, banners cracking. Direwolf walked beside Fiery Stag. At front rode two kings, one crowned by loyal hearts, one by righteousness unyielding, and between them a man many thought a ghost, hood down now, face scar-etched, hair gray as rime. Soldiers murmured his name like prayer. Gates swung wide. The great host thundered south, snow swirling around hooves, steam rising like breath of giants. Behind them Harrenhal's wrecked spires speared sky. Ahead, the King's Road ribboned through forest toward capital, where a boy on iron chair cut himself on every quarrel. They marched into history's forge, iron hearts beating to the rhythm of winter's drum. Far north, ravens took wing from Castle Black, carrying desperate plea across darkening world. In white forests beyond, shapes moved that had no warmth, no mercy. Ned Stark felt the pull, a cold star on horizon, but for now war demanded step after step. He set heel to horse and followed son and king into falling snow, a silent promise in his mind. The north will not kneel, the north will not break, and before the longest night ends, the north will rise, clad not in shadow, but in dawn's first blade of clear, unforgiving light. The road to King's Landing cut through a wounded realm, its flanks flickering with burned farms and half-abandoned villages where only dogs prowled. Columns of steam rose from muddied ruts as 20,000 boots churned thawing ground to porridge. The sky stayed the color of old iron, unreleased snow ever pregnant in the clouds, and the wind that strafed the banners carried undertones of seerot and distant fire. Ned Stark rode a rangy gray courser near the vanguard, face hidden by the wolf-stitched hood once more. To his left Robb kept an unrelenting pace, gray eyes fixed south. To his right Stannis Baratheon sat rigid in that half-rusted suit he refused to exchange for gleaming plate. Stern proof, some said, that the true king needed no polish. Between the two kings rode a ghost whose name few on the march dared whisper, though they all beheld him. Some nights around the cookfires men swore they could see the outline of Ned Stark's old greatsword ice hovering above the ghost's back like a phantom moonbeam. though everyone knew the Lannisters had melted it into 2 golden blades. They passed Byford in silent daylight, wary of its emptied granaries and the line of flayed corpses nailed to the sept door. Bolton's parting gift for the Crownlands. Meage Mormont spat in the dirt and promised to tan Roos's hide to repair her shield straps. As dusk cooled the air, the host made camp at the ruined holdfast of Fellwood. Evening fires cast wolf-shaped silhouettes onto frost-caked walls, and ravens feathered the battlements like a living crown. Ned walked the perimeter, smelling pitch, listening to wind through arrow slits. On such nights he felt the kingdom's bones beneath the soil, brittle with hunger yet still unbroken. Inside the crumbled hall, Caitlin mended arrow fletchings while Brynden Tully marked supply ledgers. When Ned entered, she rose, and for one heartbeat the war fell away. They did not speak of death or missing daughters. Grief hung between them like forgotten smoke. They spoke instead of grain tonnage and the route of the baggage train. Yet when he turned to leave, she laid a trembling hand on his sleeve. He covered it with his calloused palm, and in that small gesture he told her they were still breathing. Joffrey Baratheon ruled a city of gnawed bones. King's Landing's outer rings were little more than pits of ash where bakeries once stood. Gold cloaks paced in packs, cheeks hollow under helms. The small folk who remained scavenged rats along the Blackwater's oily shore. Above it all, the red keep flared with torchlight like a hornet nest prodded each hour. Cersei slept in snatches, fingers stained crimson from the arbor red she gulped to still her nerves. Pycelle rattled chains to placate lingering courtiers. Ser Osmond Kettleblack drilled sellswords whose loyalty he wagered would last only until they smelled wolf blood nearer than Queen's coin. Varys flowed through the passages, listening. Whispers of the hooded wolf crept around every corner. Some tales claimed he rode a snowstorm and could turn men's hearts to ice. Others had him 9 feet tall, armored in the bones of southern lords. Varys merely filed each version away like new silk bolts in a private storeroom. Information, after all, came in many colors, each thread worth the correct embroidery at the proper time. When word reached the city that Gregor Clegane lay cold and rotting in Harrenhal's dry well, the small council convened in a panic. Joffrey screamed for Edric Dane's head, as if the boy could somehow atone for the mountain's fall. Cersei slapped him breathless, then kissed the mark, half-mad smile rictus across her face. By dawn, 3 different plans of defense lay scrawled across the high table in her hand. One ordering pyres of wildfire along the city's inner wards, another demanding the mass conscription of every able man from 12 to 60, the last a bribe schedule for any sellsword captain still unaffiliated. "We execute whichever plan you favor," she told the council. No one spoke. That night, Tyrion Lannister's ghost haunted the Queen's dreams, laughing, warning her that wildfire burned masters as well as foes. She woke striking at shadows. 100 leagues north, Roose Bolton finally reached the twins, his cloak dark with travel stains, his retinue thinned to the bone. Walder Frey greeted him with wheezing courtesy and suspicious fat eyes. The 2 conspirators drank weak ale in the blushing made solar while cold sleet rattled the shutters. Roose presented his plan: lure Robb Stark to a wedding feast for Edmure and Roslyn, seal doors, murder every wolf in the hall under protection of song and spiced wine. Walder sucked his gums. "And when the northerners outside the walls come howling for our blood?" Roose's mouth curved a fractional degree. "They will howl in vain, old friend. By then Tywin will ride from the west and Stannis will be ash beneath Cersei's dragon's fire." He did not mention that Tywin fled west from Harrenhal already harried by flanking riders. He did not care to weigh lions against wolves or stags, for leeches feed on any warm host. Frey considered long, then nodded. Red is the color of Frey weddings, it seems. The night before the march on Duskendale, Robb slipped from his tent into a stand of winterbear alder. The moon was low and blood-tinged. Frost whispered under his boots until he reached the perimeter fires where Ned sat alone with Grey Wind's great head in his lap. The young king lowered himself on a log opposite. For a long while they just listened to the embers click. "I dream," Robb said at last, "that the gods give us victory, the realm bends the knee, but when I return north the wall is fallen and ghosts in blue armor hunt the last of us through the blizzards." His throat bobbed. And I wonder if any of this marching southward matters. It matters, Ned answered quietly. It matters because children should sleep safe enough to have nightmares about ghosts, not men with swords. You always make it simple, Robb said. It was never simple, Ned corrected. I merely hide the knots. He ran fingers through Grey Wind's fur. If winter reaches us before we settle the throne, we face the dark divided. So we break the throne's false king first, then ride for the wall together. Wolves, stags, even lions should they repent. Robb looked up, surprised. You would spare the lions? I would demand their swords, Ned said. But winter devours grudges. He paused, then offered his son a small smile. Keep dreaming, Robb. Dreams warn us when pride makes us deaf. Robb rose but hesitated. Father, are you proud of me? Even after the crowns and battles and secrets? Ned met his eyes. I was proud the day you held your baby brother in the snow and swore never to drop him. Everything since has only proven you meant it. Robb's breath hitched. He nodded once, and the man he had become walked back through embers to ready another dawn. They struck Duskendale like an ice axe. Stannis' ships pounded the harbor walls while Manderley crossbowmen climbed ladders draped in sea-soaked tarps that muffled their clanging. Ned's shadow host knifed through the old drainage culverts again. His men joked the hooded wolf had a taste for sewers, and at the height of battle the direwolf banner unfurled atop Dun Fort's eastern tower. By dusk, Lannister garrison lay broken, and grain stores enough for 6 months filled northern wagons. The host rolled on. Small folk began to trail after. Gaunt women clutching half-starved babes, crofters leading skinny goats, priests of the Seven carrying cracked icons. Ned ordered camp kitchens doubled and posted guards to keep his men from preying on refugees. Stannis barked that mouths slowed the march. Ned barked back that soldiers fight better when they know their march buys hope. The hooded ghost and the Iron King glared across frost-churned mud until Robb stepped between and reminded them who the true enemy was. 2 mornings later, they caught a whiff of salt on the breeze. The sea, Blackwater Bay's outer fingers. King's Landing's walls shimmered in silver haze, its ramparts laced with wildfire pots every 50 feet, its gates reinforced by fresh oak and iron. From the highest parapet, a banner now flew unheard of in centuries. A red comet circling a golden lion. Cersei's new royal standard, sown by night to evoke the bleeding sky that once heralded dragons. It fluttered defiant against the pallid daylight. Ned studied it through a spyglass. Symbols woven in fear unravel quickly. Stannis took the glass after him. Symbols backed by wildfire hold a city long enough to burn. He called for siege lines, trebuchets hauled into battery. Rams bristled with iron boreheads. Robb deputized Manderley engineers to trench sappers toward the Mudgate, while Meage's women prepared scaling posts from black oaks cut at Darkwater. And all the while Ned's shadow host spread through surrounding hamlets, cutting every route a raven might take, paying each farmer triple in saltfish for silence. In the deep night before the first stone was flung, Varys climbed a forgotten tower stair and stepped onto the battlements where the ghost waited. Ned did not bother with sword. The spider carried none. They stood above a sleeping camp whose fires glimmered like scattered constellations. I wondered, Varys said, voice gentle as old parchment, if the wolf would speak with the web. I am no king, Ned answered, nor corpse. Yet you are legend, and legends crash thrones as surely as siege engines. Varys breathed winter air, shivered. Is your legend prepared to see the city turned to embers? 500,000 lives snuffed because a boy refuses surrender. Joffrey dies, Ned said flat. Cersei bends knee or shares his fate. And the small folk? They worship neither boy nor queen but bread ovens and safe beds. Open the gates, Ned said. Tomorrow before dawn bell, lead the city watch to stand back. We will take the throne without lighting a single wildfire pot. And if I cannot? Varys' smile was sad. If the Queen's priest lights the pyres at the first hint of retreat, then King's Landing becomes a funeral pyre Cersei lights her children with, Ned said, white locks fluttering. But know this, I will ride through burning streets to drag her from the throne if it kills me. Silence blanketed them. At last Varys bowed. Spiders fear fire. Webs burn clean. He withdrew into shadow. Ned watched him go and wondered which of them had just condemned the city. Hours before dawn the banners stirred. A low horn moaned, the merman's call. Camp roused, silent, arranged for final assault. But no catapults sang. Instead, a ripple traveled the ranks. The mud gate creaked open. One by one walls ignited in torch flare as countless gold cloaks stepped aside, stacking shields in neat rows. Atop the gatehouse flew a new banner, a gray direwolf stitched over black cloth. Robb's heartbeat wrapped in his throat. Stannis' face tightened, but he nodded. The hooded wolf spurred his courser. Grey Wind loped beside. They rode at a walk through the yawning gate, the clop of hooves echoing across the deserted, torchlit streets.
No wildfire. No arrows.
Market stalls lay shuttered, windows boarded. But from alleys small folk peeked, hollow-cheeked mothers clutching children, brittle men leaning on staves. Some knelt as the riders passed. Others merely watched, eyes vast with the mute hope of famine's survivors. They reached the great September of Baelor. Here stood a column of silent sparrows, heads shaved, ropes round waists. They parted, revealing Sandor Clegane kneeling upon its steps, helm discarded, sword broken in two across his knees. "I'm done bleeding for lions," he rasped, voice cracked. "Take the bitch queen and see if you can grow honor in her garden of bones." Grey Wind sniffed the hound's face, then moved on. The company pressed into the plaza before the Red Keep. Gates here remained barred, but atop the battlements Lannister archers lay unconscious in rows, mouths gagged. Varys waited beyond them holding a ring of keys. In the throne room Cersei sat alone, green wildfire lantern in lap, dress stained wine purple. Beside her, Joffrey lay slumped to one side of the Iron Throne, white-faced, eyes open, a thin thread of crimson leaking from nose. A chalice rested on the armrest, still half full. As Ned and Robb entered, her lips twitched in fragile triumph. "I warned him the wolf was rabid," she whispered. "He needed calming." She glanced to the lantern. "Do you know wildfire, Lord Stark? It burns even on water." "My son would burn brighter," Ned said. "But he deserved trial, not poison. Trial by flame is trial enough." She rose, lantern tilting. "Touch me and we all go howling to the gods." Behind Ned, Caesar edged half a step. Ned lifted a hand. "Let her speak." Cersei's laugh cracked. "A northern ghost, a wolf boy, and the bastard king. This realm deserves the rot coming to it." She lifted the lantern higher. Liquid inside shimmered an evil green. Soft footfalls scraped stone. Sansa Stark emerged from behind the throne, shackled wrists red and raw. Her gaze locked to Ned and her knees buckled. Cersei caught her hair, hauling her upright. "One move, Stark, and your daughter lights the city." Ned's world narrowed. Robb stiffened, jaw working soundless rage. Grey Wind snarled low, hackles a ridge of knives. "But," Cersei continued, voice silk soft, "my last child sleeps already. Nothing left here." Her eyes found Sansa's. "I should have left you to the Tyrells." A rose's thorns cut deeper. She kissed Sansa's temple. Venom, not affection. Then released her and stepped back holding aloft the lantern. Sansa staggered toward Ned, tears silent. He caught her, pulled her behind Robb's shield. Cersei smiled, tipped the lantern, and poured wildfire over the throne. Green flames blossomed around jagged iron blades, hissing hungrily. She stepped onto the seat, robe spraying sparks, and set the lantern at her feet. Her eyes gleamed emerald in the reflected fire. "Long live the queen," she whispered, then slit her own throat with a dagger so slender it looked part of her hand. Blood showered onto wildfire. The throne roared brighter. Stannis barked orders, bucket lines, sand barrels. Meage's women dragged heavy hides to smother flames. Ned lifted Sansa, thrust her into Robb's arms. As he turned back, Cersei's corpse slid from the seat, dress alight. He stared at the throne wreathed in toxic green. For a heartbeat, he heard Aerys Targaryen's mad cackle echo through memory. Then Stannis' men doused the fuel. Flames hissed, shrank, finally died in oily smoke. The Iron Throne stood scorched, a crown of half-molten blades weeping green tears. Silence bloomed. Stannis approached, looked upon Joffrey's corpse, Cersei's smoking ruin, the blackened seat. He turned to Ned. "Does the wolf claim it?" Ned shook his head. "Ice does not warm to iron." He glanced to Robb. "The North will guard the wall. The throne is yours, and the debt that comes with it." Stannis absorbed that like a blade across shield, impact but no yield. At length he nodded. "Then hear me, Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North, you are named Hand of the King." Ned's brows knit. "A dead man may not serve. Then serve as ghost." Stannis' mouth twitched in what passed for him as humor. "I can think of no better haunting." Robb exhaled, tension broken. He turned to the hall. "Where is Arya?" Sansa's whisper came, ragged. "She escaped moons ago, Varys told me. She became someone else." Ned pressed his lips thin. "She lives." He believed it like sunrise, distant but sure. Stannis raised voice so the hall's echoes carried beyond steel doors. "The false king is dead, and the queen with him. Let ravens fly. The realm has one ruler now, and winter marches on the wall. Those who stand with us live. Those who betray us will find no graves deep enough." Soldiers slammed sword pommels on shields, a thunder rolling through the red keep. Outside, dawn's first pale light touched the city's rooftops. The first sunrise King's Landing had seen without a lion's banner in 15 years. It took 7 days to bury the wildfire pots beyond the walls, 10 more to feed the starving, and full fortnight to quench the last purging fires. Stannis outlawed the faith militant anew after they protested his seizure of the Great September Treasury. Ned dispatched ravens north, east, and west, calling banners to Winterfell, not for war of men, but of living against dead. Jon Arryn's grandson was summoned as new Lord Paramount of the Vale. The Dornish envoy arrived swearing cautious neutrality. Everywhere eyes turned from Iron Crown to Ice Wall. On the 5th night of peace, Robb and Ned walked atop Maegor's Holdfast. Stars shimmered cold above haze. Bells tolled for funeral of cities slain. "Stannis means to rebuild the fleet," Robb mused. "Then march. He hasn't sleep in 3 days." "Winter sleeps less," Ned replied. He studied his son's profile, lines of youth burned by war's kiln. "I need you north with mother and brothers. Reform Winterwatch, gather farmers into keeps, harvest every stockfish. The dead don't raid larders, but living do." Robb chewed lip. "I left the north for pride. I return for duty." He clasped his father's wrist. "We'll build walls within walls."
Ned nodded.
"And if Bolton or Fry still plot, let them taste northern justice." Gray wind lifted muzzle, eyes golden in starlight, and loosed a soft woof as if in oath. At the twins, Roose and Walder prepared hall for crimson rite. Casks of Dornish, barrels of salt pork, harpists schooled in dirges. On the eve of feast, ravens arrived. Letters bearing Stannis' seal naming Bolton traitor, Fry accomplice, promising titles to any who delivered them bound to the wall. The Fry grandchildren whispered of shifting winds. Walder's fear smelled worse than his privies. Before dawn, river fog thick as will flooded courtyards. Shadows slipped over parapets, Northmen wearing no heraldry. One by one gates opened inward. Flayed-man banners tumbled into the moat. When the sun climbed blood-red over the trident, Roose Bolton's head adorned a pike where scrawny crows jockeyed for perches. Walder Fry vanished. Some claimed drowned. Others said a hooded woman with a scarred throat cut his heart out while he slept. Word reached King's Landing on the wings of black ravens and river rumor. The red wedding never born, drowned in fog of wolf's vengeance. Winterfell's courtyards rang with hammer and anvil again as Manderley shipwrights fashioned iron-shod wagons for obsidian shipments south. Bran studied ancient maps beside Maester Gorman. Rickon ran wolf cubs ragged through Godswood snow. When Robb rode through the gate banners snapping, the roar that rose from ramparts thawed stone hearts. He strode to the heart tree, knelt, swore he would not ride south again unless winter itself forced him. That night, settling his mother by hearth, Robb told the saga. Father's ghost, Queen's fire, Lion's fall. Caitlin wept for Sansa found, for Arya lost, for Ned hidden in plain sight. She wept for all the daughters Westeros had broken. Yet when dawn kissed her hair silver, she stood and began ordering larders, for winter's war had no patience for tears. In King's Landing, Ned scoured the dungeons, liberating forgotten prisoners. Ser Courtenay Penrose half-starved, a Lysine baker jailed for debt, a timid girl who once served as Lord Renly's cupbearer, each owed witness to Lannister crimes. Sansa watched him with silent wonder, her father now a tale greater than songs. She began assisting Grand Maester Gorman in triaging flocked refugees, learning herb lore, writing letters of amnesty. At night she sang the northern lullaby to orphan wards, and for the first time since Winterfell fell, she felt the world might grow again. Stannis named Davos Seaworth Master of Ships. Davos, grinning and blushing, swore he would build a navy strong enough to sail the wall itself if need be. Gendry Waters accepted command of city forge guilds, forging arrowheads of dragonglass under Ned's diagrams. Varys disappeared 2 nights running. Rumor said he sailed on a Braavosi cog flying no colors, bound for the free cities, to bargain for sellswords untainted by southern scorn. When he returned, his silks bore white ash like snow. Nights Ned spent with parchment, drafting accords between North and Crown. Stannis balked at any secession. Ned refused subjugation. At length they sketched a charter. The North granted high autonomy, free to raise its own levies and collect its own taxes, owing only defense of realm and a token tithe of dragonglass. Some called it the Winter Compact. Others called it stark nonsense. It passed the small council by single vote, Olenna Tyrell's, won when Ned promised half the crownlands next harvest for reach widows left by lion wars. A bite of wolf bread, she chuckled. Better than a mouthful of ashes. By first snow of the new year, the wall's beacon pyres flashed crimson across northern skies. 2 long burns and 1 short. Others cited a league from Eastwatch. Meage Mormont's 1,000 spears had arrived in time, but they reported pale spiders as large as hounds weaving icewebs through haunted forest. Jon Snow, now Lord Commander after Jeor's death at the Fist, begged for swords. Steel for living hearts, dragonglass for dead. Stannis answered before Ned could. He would ride north himself, leaving King's Landing under Lord Hand Stark and Queen Regent Shireen, with Mother Melisandre more shadow than flesh behind her. Ned protested, "You are the throne," but Stannis only grunted. A kingdom without living subjects is no kingdom. They marched within a fortnight. Stannis, Davos, a contingent of Stormlanders, and 500 northern volunteers led by Ned's steward Hallis Malin. Ned remained. The ghost needed to shepherd fragile peace, and he would not leave Sansa again. Still, watching the black columns will north under fiery stag banner, he felt half of him riding with them into the frozen vale. One calm evening Sansa found her father on the terrace overlooking the city's half-repaired rooftops. The air smelled faintly of pine incense from street altars. "A raven arrived from Braavos," she said, cheeks pink. "Arya, she's alive. Training with the faceless men, they think." Ned closed eyes a moment. "The last place I'd wish her," he murmured, then smiled. "And perhaps the only place she belongs." Sansa clasped his arm. "We'll see her again. Perhaps she will see us first," he chuckled. They watched black sails glide across bay water turned rose by sunset. Stormbreakers, Davos called them, ships to ferry grain north. Below, markets reopened, merchants haggled, children chased one another, wooden swords clacking. Life crept back, tentative as green shoots after frost. "Do you ever tire of being dead?" Sansa asked softly. "Each dawn," Ned said. "But I recall what living cost the last time. Better a dead wolf than an eaten lamb." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "One day you'll come home, truly." "One day," he echoed. His gaze drifted past the city, past the horizon. to a wall of ice 300 miles long where blue shadows stirred. He felt them in his marrow. Winter remained the truest enemy. But so long as a single hearth fire burned, humanity held a blade against the coming night. As the sun finally slid behind the Blackwater rush, Ned Stark, Ghost Lord in hand, let the day's noise fade. Somewhere high a lone raven wheeled, feathers black as midnight snow. It turned northward and vanished. Ned whispered an old prayer, half wolves, half children's rhyme. Cold may come and cold may stay, but hearts of fire will light our way. Snow may hush and ice may bind, yet dawn will rise for those who mind. He looked down at his stitched hood, folded neatly by Sansa's hands. Tomorrow he would don it again, lead counsel, mend laws. Tomorrow he would remain the hooded wolf. But for this brief crimson dusk, he allowed himself to be simply Eddard, husband, father, the man who once taught a boy to sharpen a blade and a girl to ride with wild hair. A man with scars older than some kingdoms, but with hope still as fierce as his sea. Hildren's first cries. Below, the city lights winked alive, a constellation of mortal flame pricking the belly of night. Somewhere far beyond, the wall's signal fires surely answered. Between them, shadows moved, but so did light, and the old gods willing that would be enough. And thus the ghost watched the evening settle over King's Landing, silent promise etched across weathered face. Winter, come. We remember,